Chapter 1287, Easy kills Tai Ta remained in cultivation, but since it was much easier to absorb the energy crystals from the Xianhuang beasts than monster cores, his strength had increased extremely quickly. Jianchen could basically sense that Tai Ta's strength was increasing at every moment of the day. Jianchen did not disturb Tai Ta. He left the artifact space by himself and advanced through the boundless plains of desolation. Since the sword spirits guided him, he did not become lost. He maintained a straight path throughout his journey. A day later, a great mountain range appeared in Jianchen's vision. From afar, it seemed like a huge, slumbering dragon. The mountain range weaved about and was extraordinarily steep. Even from afar, Jianchen could clearly sense a vast presence radiating from the mountain range. The mountain range seemed very close, but it was extremely far away from him. After traveling several hundred kilometers, he finally arrived at the foot of the mountain. Immediately, Jianchen felt like he was facing an entire world. Jianchen felt like he was standing before a vast world as he stood before the mountain range. It was teeming with a vast, boundless presence, and he felt as insignificant as an ant when he stood there. Not only was it due to a difference in size, it was also due to a difference in presence. The height and size of the mountain range was unknown. It reached as far as the eye could see, while the mountain peaks were obscured by a layer of hazy yellow clouds. The mountain range was red in color since it was filled with various fire-red vegetation. It was teeming with fire-attributed energy of the world. Jianchen had never sensed energy so vast, and it even possessed faint strands of Xianhuang qi. This is the elemental mountains. The mountain range is a natural barrier in Xianhuang microcosms. The entire mountain range forms a circle around the center. As long as you cross the mountains, you'll be able to reach the central region of the Xianhuang microcosm. Ziying appeared above Jianchen and gave an explanation to Jianchen as he stared at the huge mountain range. As soon as Ziying finished speaking, Qing Suo appeared as well. She stared at the elemental mountains ahead and said, "There are many heavenly resources of the 5 attributes within the elemental mountains, and the Xianhuang beasts that guard them are quite strong as well. There are no Xianhuang beasts below Saint Emperor, and there might even be 1 or 2 heavenly immortal Xianhuang beasts, so Master needs to be extra careful in the mountain range. The difference between earthen immortals and heavenly immortals is qualitative. With Master's current strength, there should be no problems dealing with peak earthen immortal Xianhuang beasts, but things will become troublesome if you come across a heavenly immortal Xianhuang beast." Jianchen became rather stern. Heavenly immortal Xianhuang beasts would be existences that had surpassed Saint Emperor on the Tian Yuan continent. Jianchen no longer feared Class 9 Xianhuang beasts now that he had reached Sword Origin, but he was not confident he could deal with Xianhuang beasts that had surpassed Saint Emperor. Jianchen entered the elemental mountains. He entered the region of the fire attribute, so all of the vegetation around him possessed a demonic red. The vegetation gently swayed like tiny sparks dancing about happily while the temperature soared as he traveled deeper. The vegetation in the elemental mountains was not made up of ordinary plants, but they were not heavenly resources either, so they were not as useful. However, there were many heavenly resources hidden among them. "Master, there is a stalk of scorching fire grass 3 kilometers to your left. If cultivators of fire-attributed cultivation methods ingest the grass, not only will it increase their cultivation speed, it will refine their energy." 5 minutes later, the sword spirits discovered a heavenly resource hidden among the plants and immediately informed Jianchen. Jianchen arrived where it was, and he carefully removed a weed-like plant from the ground. The scorching fire grass was only the size of a palm and seemed very ordinary. It was so red that it almost seemed like blood, hiding extremely dense fire-attributed energy within. First grade of the immortal tier. Jianchen recognized the quality of the scorching fire grass with a single glance. He knew quite a few immortal tier heavenly resources in the Xianhuang microcosm now, so he obviously developed some ability to discern certain types of heavenly resources. The scorching fire grass was not some particularly valuable heavenly resource, so there was no Xianhuang beast guarding it. Jianchen left as soon as he had collected it, continuing his search. "Master, there's another flame cloud fruit tree up ahead." It's reached the 4th grade, Ching Suo said again without long. Following Ching Suo's directions, Jian Shen indeed came across another flame cloud fruit tree. The tree was much larger than the one from before. The thumb-sized fruits on it glowed with a hazy, red light, as if there were flames dancing inside them. However, 2 Class 9 Xianhuang beasts loafed around the tree. They seemed like foxes. They were completely fire-red and relatively small, only the size of an adult human. However, their heads were tiger-like, abnormally fierce in appearance as they glared around. The moment Jian Shen discovered them, they discovered Jian Shen as well. They immediately stood up and produced throaty growls, slowly advancing toward Jian Shen. Their 4 limbs were powerful while their claws were both sharp and long. They gave off an icy cold glint. Jian Shen habitually pulled his emperor armament from his space ring. His mind emptied as he reached sword origin. He swung the sword at one of the Xianhuang beasts from 50 meters away. Jian Shen's attack seemed to stimulate a certain presence in the surroundings. It seemed simple, but it seemed to also possess a certain supreme power. As he struck out, a glow appeared, causing the surroundings to dull. An extremely bright, snow-white streak of light shot out, flying toward the Class 9 Xianhuang beast. The Xianhuang beast narrowed its eyes as fear filled its face. It could feel just how terrifying the streak of light was. It wanted to dodge, but it discovered that it could not no matter what it did. As a result, it swung its paws in attempt to tear the streak of light to pieces. Spurt. The streak of light collided with the sharp claws, and they were completely severed. However, the silver-white light weakened slightly after encountering the obstruction, finally landing on the Xianhuang beast's head. A deep wound immediately appeared on the head of the Xianhuang beast as blood wildly spurted out. It quickly dyed its entire head red. The other Class 9 Xianhuang beast could not help but halt after seeing its companion injured from just the first clash. It looked at Jian Shen in fear and already began to consider retreat. Although these beasts lacked intelligence, their bestial instincts still made them feel dread when they were attacking an existence that was stronger than them. Chapter 1288, Class 10 Xianhuang Beast, 1. Jian Shen was stunned as well when he managed to easily injure a Class 9 Xianhuang beast. After reaching sword origin, the increase in his strength had completely exceeded anything he had been expecting, but he was soon overwhelmed by joy. He understood that Class 9 Xianhuang beasts no longer posed a threat to him. Their tough bodies were as fragile as tofu now. At this moment, a bright, dazzling white light flickered again. Jian Shen swung the emperor armament and an extremely pure and powerful sword qi shot toward the injured Xianhuang beast. It seemed like a simple strike, but it possessed the endless mysteries of the way of the sword. It did not seem like a sword qi but the laws of the world. It was a way. The second sword qi disappeared into the wound caused by the first and cleaved the Xianhuang beast's head in half. It continued on without weakening into the beast's neck and then body. In the end, the Xianhuang beast's entire body was cleaved in half by Jian Shen's second sword qi, except the 2 halves remained stuck together. Afterward, the beast collapsed on the ground and stopped moving. Its central nervous system had been utterly destroyed by the violent sword qi while its vast vitality rapidly leaked away. The other Class 9 Xianhuang beast was stunned by what had just happened. It had also sensed that intruder was far stronger than what it could deal with after witnessing its companion die so quickly. It immediately produced a terrified growl before turning around to flee. A Class 9 Xianhuang beast was equivalent to a Class 9 monster core, and Class 9 monster cores were extremely valuable on the Tianyuan continent. Jian Shen could not allow the beast to flee right before him, so he immediately used the illusory flash and pursued the beast as a blur. Chaotic force surged out, causing the Emperor armament to shine with a dark light and radiate with the violent presence of destruction. A snow-white layer of light silently appeared on the surface of the sword as well, radiating with extremely sharp sword qi. The snow-white light mixed with the chaotic force and seemed to fuse. However, this force was clearly much greater than when Jian Shen had struck out before. The Class 9 Xianhuang beast became even more horrified when it sensed the terrifying presence behind it. It began to flee even faster, but just when it had increased its speed, it felt that it had been locked onto by a powerful presence. The red world that it was familiar with disappeared as well, having been replaced by a snow-like whiteness. Spurt. Jianchen shot a meter-long black and white light from his emperor armament. It struck the back of the Xianhuang beast. He almost managed to cleave the Xianhuang beast in half, with only a fifth of the beast's flesh keeping its two halves together. The Xianhuang beast could no longer flee after it became so heavily injured. It collapsed on the ground, but due to inertia, it slid several kilometers through the forest before coming to a stop. It produced a painful wail. Jianchen slowly made his way over to the Xianhuang beast with his emperor armament. Although it was still alive, it was completely incapacitated. Its injuries were so heavy that it could not even stand. Jianchen stabbed the Xianhuang beast's head and destroyed its nerves, completely ending its life. He skillfully removed the energy crystal from its body before tossing the corpse into the artifact space. Afterward, Jianchen returned to where he was before and collected the corpse of the other Xianhuang beast. Afterward, he began to collect the flame cloud fruit. In the blink of an eye, Jianchen had already stayed in the elemental mountains for 5 days. The mountain range was extremely vast. Even after 5 whole days, he had not managed to make it out of the fire-attributed region with his speed. But in the 5 days, Jianchen had collected quite a few heavenly resources. Without any exception, all of them were fire-attributed heavenly resources. He had also come across around a dozen Class 9 Xianhuang beasts during that time, which he all killed. He obtained the same amount of energy crystals, which were equivalent to Class 9 monster cores. There were no Xianhuang beasts below Class 9 in the elemental mountains. All of them were at least Class 9, but there were far fewer than he had expected. Every single Class 9 Xianhuang beast was very far away from each other. They all had their own territory and guarded some valuable heavenly resources. After 5 days of traveling, Jianchen had scaled up a mountain over 9,000 meters in height. Less than 300 meters above him was the layer of hazy yellow clouds. The clouds were not ordinary. Even with Jianchen's eyesight, he could not see through them, and he could sense that the Xianhuang qi that permeated the world was even denser in them. However, he could not absorb it no matter how hard he tried. He did not even have a method to take away even just a tiny portion of it. Many of the mountains in the elemental mountain ranges reached into the clouds, so it was impossible to see just how tall they were. Jianchen continued to climb since he had been locked into this mountain range. As he rapidly climbed higher, the surrounding energy of the world became even more abundant. He knew he would come across even higher-grade heavenly resources as he approached the peak. He had already spent over a month in the Xianhuang microcosm and only had around 1.5 months left to continue exploring. Chapter 1289, Class 10 Xianhuang Beast, 2. The temperature surged as faint strands of yellow mist appeared around Jianchen. He had entered the thick layer of clouds and his vision became obscured. Visibility was extremely low, and even the usage of his soul became more and more restricted. At this moment, Jianchen suddenly froze. He suddenly swayed and reappeared over 10 meters away like he had teleported. Bang! As soon as Jianchen reappeared, a red blur landed where he was standing before, and with a violent sound, rocks were shattered and thrown into the air along with dust. Jianchen became extremely stern. He had failed to see what that red blur was, nor did he learn what had suddenly attacked him. If he had not maintained his vigilance and dodged instinctually, he probably would have suffered a lot just then. However, before Jianchen could think about it some more, his expression suddenly changed. All his muscles tightened as his eyes stared right before him. He felt a terrifyingly powerful presence lock onto him. Not only did Jianchen find it suffocating, he felt his body become as heavy as a mountain. Even his movements became limited. The presence was so tremendous that it basically froze every inch of space around him, almost trapping him through the control of space. Beyond Saint Emperor. Jianchen was shocked. Even though he had yet to see the appearance of the Xianhuang beast, he had determined that it had reached the origin realm just from its presence alone. This was because he had slain many Class 9 Xianhuang beasts already and understood their strength. It was impossible for a beast at that level to give off so much pressure. This Xianhuang beast has already reached the level of heavenly immortals. Master, you're not its opponent. Run. The sword spirit's voice rang out in Jian Chen's head as well. Jian Chen rapidly began to retreat without a second thought. He leaped down the mountain. The origin realm and sainthood were two major realms of cultivation, so the difference of strength was extremely great. Jian Chen was confident he could kill any Class 9 Xianhuang beasts, but that confidence was not the same against Class 10 Xianhuang beasts. Jian Chen descended along a steep, curvy cliff face, dropping several thousand meters in just a few seconds. He had left the thick layer of clouds in the sky and his visibility finally returned to him. However, he dared not to relax at all. Not only did the vast presence remain locked on him, but it was also growing stronger. Oh no, that Class 10 Xianhuang beast's chasing me right now, and it's getting closer and closer. Jian Chen could feel how bad the situation was inside. He suddenly kicked off a great tree beside him, immediately shooting off into the distance like a loose arrow. Due to the restrictions of the mysterious force, flying was basically impossible in the Xianhuang microcosm, so Jian Chen could only glide like a bird while using the illusory flash. Hiss! At this moment, an ear-piercing sound rang out from behind. 1,000-meter-long python emerged from the thick layer of clouds and appeared in front of Jian Chen. Its body radiated a red light, which seemed to fuse with the surroundings. It slithered forward as its tongue flickered in pursuit of Jian Chen. It was quite faster than him. When the red python first came out, it was 9,000 meters away from Jian Chen, but that distance was reduced to 6,000 in less than a minute before shrinking to 3,000. In the end, it was only a few hundred meters away from Jian Chen. Jian Chen's heart slightly sank. The terrain was complicated, which limited his strength. Meanwhile, the python behind him had lived here for many years already. It moved through the mountains and forests like a fish through water. It was impossible for Jian Chen to escape since the distance between them was decreasing. Jian Chen ended up stopping. Chaotic force surged from his right hand before condensing into a dark sword of energy. Resplendent and pure sword chi was present in the chaotic force, mixing with it and, hence, increasing his strength. He had given up on the Emperor armament long ago. After reaching sword origin, the Emperor armament only became more damaged, and even if he used it, it would not increase his strength at all. Since I can't shake off this Class 10 Xianhuang beast, I'll fight it. I may not be able to defeat it, but I can see just how terrifying existences that have surpassed Saint Emperors are and use this opportunity to gain a rough understanding of them, Jian Chen thought. He was confident that killing this Class 10 Xianhuang beast would not be easy. At this moment, the giant python opened its mouth and a wave of flames surged out. They shot toward Jian Chen with extreme heat, burning all the vegetation that they came across to a crisp. Jian Chen was shocked inside. He could feel that the fire from the python was even more powerful than Hong Lian's flames. Although Hong Lian was a scorching divine phoenix and held supreme power over fire, the python's flames were much more terrifying than her flames due to such a great disparity in strength. Jian Chen used the illusory flash to safely avoid the flames despite his surprise. He felt that he was rather fortunate that he was only facing a Class 10 Xianhuang beast who lacked any abilities. If it was a true origin realm expert, he would not be able to counterattack at all. Jian Chen quickly approached the python after dodging its flames. Leaping over 10 meters into the air, he arrived above the python's head and stabbed down as hard as he could with the sword he had condensed. The next moment, Jian Chen's eyes silently narrowed, because his full-powered attack only managed to leave an insignificant scratch a finger deep. It could not even be counted as a wound. What a terrifying body. It's probably more than 10 times tougher than the bodies of Class 9 Xianhuang beasts. Probably only origin realm experts can heavily injure it. Jian Chen was astounded. The toughness of the Class 10 Xianhuang beast had greatly exceeded anything he had expected. Even with his mental preparations, he was still shocked. At this moment, a terrifying force appeared. The python viciously shook its head, flinging Jian Chen far off into the distance. He crashed into a dozen thick trees. Jian Chen immediately felt like all his bones had become dislocated with just that. Every inch of his body throbbed painfully. If it were not for his chaotic body, he would have been reduced to a smear of flesh. Jian Chen only managed to stabilize himself after flying for many kilometers. He then began to flee without even looking back. From just that momentary contact, he had already gained a rough understanding of the strength of Class 10 Xianhuang beasts. They were undefeatable. However, Jian Chen was still unable to move faster than the python due to the terrain. He was caught again without long. "Master, you can't move in a straight line, or there's no way you'll move faster than it." At the same time, all the Xianhuang beasts in the elemental mountains have their own territories. This heavenly immortal Xianhuang beast is probably the supreme ruler in the fire attribute region, so Master won't be able to break away successfully if you stay here. We just happen to be quite close to the earth attribute region. Let's go over there. That's the only way we can escape this Xianhuang beast. Ziying's voice materialized in Jian Chen's head. Raising his head to look, there just happened to be the yellow, earth attribute region several dozen kilometers away, so he immediately changed direction and ran toward it in a zigzagging fashion. The distance took Jian Chen less than a minute to traverse. He arrived at the boundary of the fire attribute region very quickly and was about to cross over. The python in pursuit immediately became flustered and it saw that Jian Chen was about to flee from its territory. It spat out streams of fire, clearly not planning to let Jian Chen off easily. This was because the presence of chaotic force on Jian Chen made it drool. It was on the same level as the Xianhuang beast, so it had a vague feeling that its strength would increase a lot if it managed to consume the insignificant existence. Several dozen streams of fire formed a great net in front of Jian Chen. Although Jian Chen had managed to avoid most of the streams, he was still struck by one. The unimaginable heat immediately turned his clothes to ash. Even with his fourth-layer chaotic body, he found it difficult to endure, having become bright red from the heat. He shed an entire layer of his skin, which was excruciating. Jian Chen gritted his teeth as he bitterly endured. He used the illusory flash to avoid the net of fire and finally made it out of the fire attribute region and into the earth attribute region. The python did not follow him over. It stopped at the boundary and stared at Jian Chen, unwilling to give up on its prey. Its tongue flickered constantly as it produced ear-piercing hisses. Although the python did not follow him over, Jian Chen did not stop. He endured the burning pain all over him as he quickly fled into a forest. The python remained at the boundary for quite some time, but it did not cross it in the end. It returned in gloom and full of regret. At this moment, Jian Chen currently sat beneath a large tree. His burnt skin was being shed part by part before being replaced by new skin. Although he was severely burned, it was nothing that the terrifying recovery of the chaotic force couldn't handle. 10 minutes later, Jian Chen stood up full of vitality. He pulled a new set of clothes from his space ring and changed into them. He had already made a full recovery from his wounds, but he was as bald as an egg. His flowing, long hair had all been burnt to a crisp. Chapter 1290, The Final Material. In the blink of an eye, Jian Chen had stayed in the Earth Attribute region for several days. He had come across over 20 Class 9 Xianhuang beasts during that time. He killed them all and collected their corpses and energy crystals. However, Jian Chen had gained a clear understanding of the strength of Class 10 Xianhuang beasts after being chased by one before, so he did not provoke any of them over these past few days. As soon as he came across a region that might have been the territory of one, he would take a long detour around it. Other than that, Jian Chen had come across many immortal tier heavenly resources as well. The various heavenly resources he had collected over the past few days had already formed a small mountain. There was so many that even Jian Chen was shocked. A few days later, Jian Chen passed through the Earth Attribute region. He had only a month and a few days left until his 3 months in Xianhuang microcosm came to an end, so he knew just from the size that even if he spent the rest of his time here, he would not be able to make it through the entire mountain range. The mountain range was just far too vast. It was the largest Jianchen had ever been in. To cross through a region with his speed took several days even if he traveled in a straight line. He would have to spend even more time if he wanted to search through every region. With his remaining time, just searching through a single region would be extremely difficult, let alone the entire place. I can't waste valuable time here. I should cross the mountains and enter the depths to have a look there. There must be even more treasures there, Jian Chen made up his mind. Although he knew that there were still a lot of Class 9 Xianhuang beasts left in the elemental mountains, he no longer planned to stay any longer. He immediately changed directions and crossed the mountains as he made his way into the depths. Jian Chen traveled for 2 whole days before making it through the mountains, arriving in the region they encircled. The huge basin seemed like an ancient forest as trees towered over him. They were several hundred or even thousands of meters tall. The vegetation there grew vigorously, having reached over 10 meters in height. It was teeming with life. Although it was only separated by a single mountain range, the outside and inside seemed like 2 completely different worlds. Jian Chen entered the forest. The heavenly resources in the forest were even more plentiful than the elemental mountains. When he had traveled less than 20 kilometers, he came across another violet cloud peach tree. It had already reached the 5th grade. A single peach could provide the energy equivalent to 2,500 years of cultivation. An extremely powerful Class 9 Xianhuang beast guarded the tree. Jian Chen believed that even if the Xianhuang beast had not reached the peak of Class 9, it was close already. He spent a lot of effort to slay it before taking all the immortal peaches with him. That's mortal energy fruit. Master, mortal energy fruits are an immortal fruit that can recover consumed energy extremely quickly. If you've consumed too much energy in a fight, you can consume one and return the energy within you to its peak amount in an extremely short amount of time. Ziying discovered another extremely rare heavenly resource and cried out in excitement. Master, go pick the mortal energy fruit. They're extremely rare even in the immortals world. They're one of the best immortal fruits for recovering energy. Every single one of them is extremely expensive, and they've even reached the 5th grade. Qing Suo happily encouraged Jian Chen. Jian Chen gazed over and discovered a tree over 10 meters tall up ahead. A few fist-sized, milky white fruits hung on its branches. The fruits possessed a special pattern on their surface, and up close, the pattern seemed like the faces of people. And there's amethyst spiritual bamboo over there. The sap of the bamboo is something that can heal the injuries of the soul, and it can also refine the soul and strengthen it. They're even more valuable than the mortal energy fruit, an item of demand but no supply, Ziying then said as he pointed at a region of amethyst bamboo nearby. He became even more delighted. However, he suddenly became stunned after saying that. He stared at an amethyst, fist-sized rock within the bamboo forest, and a while later, he suddenly cried out, "Een Hellstone, that's Een Hellstone. Master, there's even a piece of Een Hellstone within the amethyst spiritual bamboo. That's the last material for forging the azulate swords." Qing Suo was surprised by that and immediately looked over as well. Joy filled her face and she said, "It really is Een Hellstone. I never thought that we'd find the final material for the azulate swords here. Master, you have to obtain that stone no matter what. Once we forge the azulate swords, Master will truly embark on the way of the sword. Master will also be able to practice the techniques of the way of the sword." Jian Chen became excited as well. Forging the azulate swords was extremely important to him. Not only would he be able to obtain a weapon that truly suited himself, allowing his strength to skyrocket, he would also be able to formally practice the techniques of the sword and continue further into the realm of the way of the sword. He could become a true practitioner of the sword with the techniques he acquired. Although he had already reached sword origin, he was not in possession of his fated swords, so every time he used the wonders of the way of the sword, he felt like he was lacking something. He was unable to use his power naturally. Jian Shen was tempted to run up and hug the stone, but he needed to suppress the urge. He cautiously looked around as he expanded his soul. Jian Shen could tell from the sword spirits that both the mortal energy fruit and amethyst spiritual bamboo were no worse than 5th grade violet cloud peaches, yet they had actually appeared together, with a piece of Een Hellstone sandwiched in between. The beast that guarded them would obviously be powerful. The senses of Jian Shen's soul were severely restricted within the basin. Even as he poured all his efforts into his soul, he could only engulf a radius of 5 kilometers. The 2 heavenly resources and the Een Hellstone were 10 kilometers away from him, so it was impossible for him to discover any Xianhuang beasts if they were hiding there. Jian Shen became rather troubled in that moment. He needed to obtain the Een Hellstone no matter what, but it was quite possible that a Class 10 Xianhuang beast, or a beast even stronger than that, guarded the mortal energy fruit and amethyst spiritual bamboo. It was definitely not something he could fight. He did not know if he would have the time to collect the Een Hellstone if he faced the pursuit of such a powerful Xianhuang beast. Master, there are no Xianhuang beasts in a radius of 5 kilometers around the mortal energy fruit and amethyst spiritual bamboo. It's probably left, but from the residual presence, this Xianhuang beast should be a heavenly immortal already, and even a late or peak heavenly immortal, Ziying said sternly. What? The Xianhuang beasts already reached late or even peak heavenly immortal? Doesn't that mean it's even more powerful than the python I came across a few days ago? Jian Chen's heart skipped a beat. This was horrible news to him. That's exactly the case. The python master came across a few days ago was only an early heavenly immortal, quite a lot weaker than this one. Qing Suo became rather stern as well. They were uncertain if Jian Chen could flee if he ended up being pursued by this beast. Ziying, Qing Suo, can you see just how far the Xianhuang beast has gone? If it's gone far enough away, I can try to snatch it. I might have enough time to take away the Een Hellstone, Jian Chen asked. His attention was entirely set on the Een Hellstone. The mortal energy fruit and amethyst spiritual bamboo were valuable, but he set them aside for now. Although the Xianhuang beast was not close to the Een Hellstone, it was still a beast in the 10th class after all. It could travel several dozen kilometers in the blink of an eye. Jian Shen feared that the Xianhuang beast was close to the Een Hellstone, hidden in a place the sword spirits could not detect. Our powers have been greatly suppressed in the Xianhuang microcosm as well, so we can only see up to a region of a little less than 20 kilometers. We are helpless any further than that, Ziying regretfully replied. Chapter 1291, Battling a Class 10 Xianhuang Beast. Jian Chen hesitated over whether he should just charge up regardless of the consequences and take the Een Hellstone or not. The stone was just far too important to him. It was one of the crucial materials he needed to forge the azulite swords, so its value had already exceeded the amethyst spiritual bamboo and mortal energy fruit. As he was hesitating, the ground began to shake rhythmically. Soon followed the appearance of a powerful presence. Just the presence was enough to make Jian Chen almost suffocate. Shocked inside, Jian Chen carefully erased his presence and silently retreated, only stopping after he had reached a distance he believed to be safe. He was covered by foliage, so he could not see the Xianhuang beast's appearance, but he knew that it was definitely the beast that guarded the mortal energy fruit and amethyst spiritual bamboo. Jian Chen did not retreat too far away. He was only around 20 kilometers from the Een Hellstone. At such a distance, it would have been impossible to hide from an Origin Realm expert, but it was a Xianhuang beast who lacked any special abilities or intelligence. This was why Jian Chen was bold enough to hide at such a close distance. Jian Chen silently climbed up a large tree like a snake and cast his gaze out. He saw an elephant-like Xianhuang beast walking over from afar, traveling toward the mortal energy fruit and amethyst spiritual bamboo. It was extremely large, over 30 meters tall. It possessed 2 horns but no tusks or a trunk. Its mouth was triangular, revealing 3 sets of sharp teeth while its eyes glinted with a cold light. This should be the Class 10 Xianhuang beast that guards this place. Its strength has already reached late or even peak heavenly immortal, which is far more powerful than the python I came across a few days ago. Jian Chen silently observed the Xianhuang beast from the tree. Although it was very far away, he stood at a higher altitude, so he could see past many obstructions and observe everything going on around the Xianhuang beast. Jian Chen discovered that Xianhuang beast was crouching beside the human energy fruit and was sucking in. A visible strand of surging energy was siphoned away from the tree and into its mouth. Meanwhile, the beast was covered with countless wounds of different sizes. Every single one of them was terrifying and extremely deep. There were even quite a few large wounds on its head. This Xianhuang beast has just recently experienced a battle and is heavily injured. Jian Chen's eyes immediately lit up when he saw this. If the Xianhuang beast was heavily injured, it was impossible for its strength to be at its peak condition. The Xianhuang beast was a late or even peak heavenly immortal, but it was not in tip-top shape. Coupled with the many vicious wounds on its body, he could use them as entry point to damage its insides. Other than the fact that its strength was on par with Origin Realm experts, Class 10 Xianhuang beasts also possessed the advantage of a tough body. Under ordinary circumstances, only experts at the same level as them could get through their defenses and, hence, inflict damage. However, once this advantage was gone, even existences weaker than it could deal damage. The flames of hope were ignited within Jian Chen after seeing how injured the Xianhuang beast was. At that moment, an extremely bold idea filled his head: he would slay the Xianhuang beast. With my current strength, killing this Xianhuang beast will possess a certain amount of difficulty. Jian Chen estimated his strength against the Xianhuang beast. He frowned again. He had already reached a conclusion that even if it was heavily injured, killing the Xianhuang beast with his current strength would be extremely difficult or even impossible. At this moment, Jian Chen's face jerked before his expression was replaced by serendipity. He immediately got off the tree and retreated another several dozen kilometers, only stopping after he had arrived at the foot of the elemental mountains. With a thought, the saint artifact flew out from the center of his eyebrows and radiated a dazzling light. With a flash, Tai Ta appeared beside him as a 3-meter-tall giant. Not only was Tai Ta's presence even more powerful than before, even his skin had become resplendent. He shone with endless amounts of golden light and seemed extremely similar to a golden giant. Jian Chen, I should be able to deal with Class 9 Xianhuang beasts now, which is why I've come out. I'll kill Class 9 Xianhuang beasts with you, so we can obtain even more Class 9 monster cores, Tai Ta said with his deep voice, directly referring the energy crystals within Xianhuang beasts as monster cores. Jian Chen celebrated inside as well when he sensed how confident Tai Ta was. He was about to lay his hands on an injured Class 10 Xianhuang beast and was worried that he was not strong enough. He did not think that Tai Ta would emerge from seclusion right now and make up for his lack of power. Although Tai Ta still had not become a Saint Emperor, he had increased his strength to the 8th heavenly layer of Saint King after this period of cultivation. Coupled with his mysteries of war, he could easily kill Class 9 Xianhuang beasts, and he would even be able to battle a heavily injured Class 10 Xianhuang beast. Tai Ta, there's an extremely heavily injured Class 10 Xianhuang beast up ahead, and it's guarding 2 extremely valuable heavenly resources as well as a material extremely important to me. I need to obtain it no matter what. Do you think you can slay it with me? Jian Chen said to Tai Ta as battle intent burned within his eyes. Tai Ta's eyes lit up as he stared at Jian Chen in interest. He said with a burning desire, a Class 10 Xianhuang beast? Isn't that an existence that has surpassed Saint Emperor? If we kill it, doesn't that mean a Class 10 monster core? Although Tai Ta's strength was rather extraordinary now, his knowledge was still very limited. Let alone a Class 10 monster core, even Class 9 monster cores were something that only appeared in legends to him. Only when he came to the Xianhuang microcosm did he actually see a Class 9 monster core, and it was not even a true monster core but the energy crystal formed within a Class 9 Xianhuang beast. Correct, Jian Chen firmly nodded. Jian Chen, I'll listen to you. If you think we can defeat it together, then let's fight this Class 10 Xianhuang beast. If we can kill it, then let's kill it, Tai Ta replied immediately. He knew that he was not as good at coming up with plans as Jianchen, so he gave all the authority to Jianchen. Afterward, he excitedly rubbed his hands together and murmured, "A Class 10 monster core. I've never heard of one on the Tianyuan continent. I wonder how much it's worth." Jianchen shook his head inside and bitterly smiled when he heard what Tai Ta had mumbled. Only an extremely limited number of Class 7 monster cores would appear in some large auctions. Class 8 and 9 monster cores would never surface on the market, let alone a Class 10 one. "Tai Ta, this Xianhuang beast is already heavily injured. Its strength has been greatly reduced, so we need to move as soon as possible. Otherwise, it'll recover a little if we give it some time, and it'll become even more difficult to deal with. Let's discuss the plan to deal with it." Jianchen quickly explained a method to kill the Xianhuang beast to Tai Ta. Facing a Class 10 Xianhuang beast head-on would not work. The elephant-like Xianhuang beast weakly lay on the ground beside the mortal energy fruit tree and constantly absorbed the energy from the tree. It was dispirited and seemed sick, clearly its injuries were very bad. Suddenly, it snapped its eyes open. Even though its gaze was filled with exhaustion, it was still extremely sharp. It glared around before producing a deafening roar. It struggled to stand, finding enough strength was difficult. With a flash of dazzling, golden light, Tai Ta used his celestial movement to appear before the Class 10 Xianhuang beast as if he had teleported. He shone brightly as supreme battle intent radiated from him. Most of it had condensed within the giant axe above his head. Mysteries of war, destruction. Tai Ta bellowed as the axe above him began to shine with a dazzling glow. He swung it at the deepest wound on the Xianhuang beast's head with lightning-like speed. Spurt. Blood was thrown into the air. Tai Ta's blow had caused the vicious wound on the Xianhuang beast's head to become even larger. It was so painful that the Xianhuang beast wailed out loud. At this moment, the Xianhuang beast had finally managed to stand up. It immediately raised one of its thick legs to stomp Tai Ta. The bottom of its foot flickered with an earthen yellow light. It encased a region that was 3 meters wide, which Tai Ta just happened to be in. Tai Ta immediately felt his body grow heavy as his feet sank into the ground. He felt like the weight of his body had suddenly increased countless times. Just lifting an arm would require over a dozen times more energy than usual, making his movements extraordinarily slow. Mysteries of war, celestial movement. Tai Ta yelled as he used his technique to break free from the encased region. His body immediately lightened up once he made it away because the pressure that the Xianhuang beast had created vanished. Boom! At the same time, the Xianhuang beast's leg landed heavily on the ground. The leg that seemed to weigh several tons failed to create a deep pit and even failed to leave a single mark on the ground. However, the entire mountain violently shook violently with a loud noise. Tai Ta became extremely stern. He knew that the stomp from the Xianhuang beast was not as simple as it had seemed. It possessed its own secrets. If he had been hit by the foot, he would have been smashed to a pulp, even his war god body. Hiss! Hiss! Suddenly, the Xianhuang beast's horns produced a streak of electric blue light. The two streams of light crisscrossed and suddenly shot toward Tai Ta, moving extremely quick. Chapter 1292, A Difficult Victory. The streams of light moved just far too fast, no one could react in time. All Tai Ta saw was a flash of lightning. Then he was struck by the streams of light. Tai Ta immediately froze as a ball of indigo lightning crackled and wrapped around him. Tai Ta's skin quickly blackened, no longer a golden luster, while the air filled with a burnt smell. Boom! Tai Ta collapsed on the ground straight-backed. Sparks flickered around his body. The lightning from the horns of the Xianhuang beast possessed unbelievable might. The electricity had completely numbed Tai Ta. Even the vast energy within him was slowed. The Xianhuang beast produced a shaking roar as it quickly arrived beside Tai Ta. It raised a foot to stomp on Tai Ta. Again, a ball of earthen yellow light flickered on the bottom of its foot, and the weight of anything within the region enclosed by the light rapidly increased. At this moment, two resplendent, white sword cheese shot out of the bushes. They moved as streaks of light, landing accurately in the eyes of the Xianhuang beast. Spurt. Spurt. Blood was immediately thrown into the air when the Xianhuang beast's eyes exploded because of the two sword cheese that had appeared out of nowhere. Its eyes were reduced to two bloody and empty sockets. The Xianhuang beast painfully roared while the foot above Tai Ta slowed down. Taking advantage of the moment, Jianchen leaped from the bush and arrived beside Tai Ta as quickly as he could with the illusory flash. He grabbed Tai Ta by the shoulder before throwing him far away. During the short moment of contact between his hand and Tai Ta's shoulder, Jianchen gained an idea of Tai Ta's condition. He immediately became relieved. Tai Ta was heavily injured, but his life was not threatened. His body had only been stunned by the powerful electricity, causing him to temporarily lose his mobility. The Xianhuang beast, which had been blinded and was in excruciating pain from losing its eyes, immediately stabbed a cluster of nerves, decreasing its senses to the lowest point possible. It was a perfect opportunity to deal a heavy blow to it, so after throwing Tai Ta aside, Jianchen leaped onto the Xianhuang beast's head. He used chaotic force and his attainments in the sword to condense an extremely powerful sword qi in his hand. He stabbed it toward the deepest wound on the Xianhuang beast's head. Although Jianchen managed to stab the sword qi into the beast's head, he soon felt a powerful obstruction and only managed to stab it 2 inches deep before not being able to continue any further. Jianchen was secretly shocked. The toughness of this Xianhuang beast was even greater than the giant red python he had come across before. His attack had clearly already entered its body, yet it still encountered such a powerful obstruction. If the Xianhuang beast had not been heavily injured and was not covered in countless deep wounds, the two of them would probably not have even been able to get through its hide. Blue light began to flicker from its horns again, causing Jianchen to narrow his eyes. He had witnessed the terror of the blue lightning when it hit Tai Ta, so without any hesitation, he leaped off the Xianhuang beast's head with a flip in an attempt to dodge the attack. A spark of electricity shot from between the Xianhuang beast's horns, striking the ground ahead. However, the electricity exploded 2 meters above the ground and expanded into a web-like net that encased a radius of 100 meters. Jianchen had never thought that the Xianhuang beast would know such a clever trick, so he was immediately struck by a few sparks. His clothes were immediately reduced to ashes while his body blackened ere the powerful streams of electricity hit. His body flickered with sparks. Just like Tai Ta, Jianchen collapsed on his face. The electricity had numbed his entire body to the point that his limbs froze. Even moving a finger was extremely difficult. The circulation of chaotic force within him became extremely slow as well. Although the Xianhuang beast had been blinded, it could still sense where Jianchen was. It raised of its huge feet to stomp on him. The earthen yellow light from before had already surrounded him, making him feel like a mountain had descended upon him. He felt extremely heavy. At this moment, Jianchen was completely incapacitated. All he could do was watch as the foot descended upon him. Bang! With a heavy sound, the foot landed on him with unimaginably terrifying force. Jianchen had not been stomped into the ground, but his body still sank. Spurt. Jianchen vomited a mouthful of blood as his face became sheet white. He had almost been flattened by the stomp. All of his organs had been reduced to paste and most of his bones had been shattered. His chest had been reduced to a bloody mess, and he became red all over from the blood. Even with Jianchen's 4th layer chaotic body, he could not endure the stomp from this Xianhuang beast. If it was any other expert, even if they were a saint emperor, they probably would have been reduced to meat paste by the stomp. Jianchen lay on the ground immobilized. He was so heavily injured that even with his chaotic body, he was unable to recover in a short amount of time. However, the numbness he felt rapidly receded, allowing him to slowly recover control of his body and chaotic force. However, the Xianhuang beast did not give Jianchen the chance to even catch a breath. It opened its gaping mouth, revealing 3 rows of extremely sharp teeth. With a single motion, it picked Jianchen up with its mouth and viciously bit his chest, almost severing him into 2. Only 2/5 of his chest held him together. "Jian Chen, I've come." A furious bellow rang out when Tai Ta had recovered. He quickly ran over at the speed of lightning and radiated a golden light. Battle intent surged into the sky from him. Mysteries of war, form shatterer. Tai Ta wielded his axe with his 2 hands and lifted it high above his head. Immediately, a dazzling golden light shone from it, striking the Xianhuang beast's head as a golden afterimage. The force of the axe was completely hidden within, making it impossible to sense any of the pressure it gave off. However, it seemed to be very heavy when he swung it. The energy within seemed to be unending, pulsing out like waves striking a shoreline. At the same time, it felt extremely unstable, as if it was gunpowder and could explode at any moment. The golden axe landed on the deepest wound on the Xianhuang beast's head and, suddenly, the terrifying energy erupted like a bomb. The golden axe transformed into golden streams of energy that wildly wreaked havoc within the Xianhuang beast's head. The energy within the axe seemed to be unlimited. The golden energy poured out without any signs of stopping as it constantly smashed the Xianhuang beast's wound with powerful attacks, causing it to deepen more and become more severe. In the end, it broke through the final layer of defenses within the Xianhuang beast's head, allowing streams of energy to invade the depths of the beast's head, completely obliterating its central nervous system. With that destroyed, the Xianhuang beast powerlessly collapsed on the ground with a boom. Its heavy body caused the earth to tremble. Tai Ta exhaled in relief when he saw that the Xianhuang beast had finally collapsed. Exhaustion appeared on his face as he murmured, "I never thought that using the form shatterer would be so terrifying. I can use Mortality Breaker, Void Smasher, and Destruction several times on end without losing my breath, but just a single form shatterer drained half of my energy. Looks like this technique created by Uncle Ergens is powerful, but it can't be used so easily." Tai Ta put away his axe and arrived before the huge mouth of the beast. He saw that a large portion of Jian Chen's body was stuck in the sharp teeth, or in other words, the teeth were deeply embedded in his body. Only lower half of his body, from his chest below, was visible. The other part was within the mouth. Tai Ta crouched down and opened the Xianhuang beast's mouth and carefully pulled Jian Chen out. He asked in concern, "Jian Chen, are you all right?" Jian Chen bitterly smiled. He said with a rather pale face, "I've been heavily injured this time, so I've temporarily become incapacitated. I need to enter the artifact space to heal." He then pointed at the amethyst spiritual bamboo in the distance and said, "Tai Ta, there's an amethyst rock within that region of bamboo. That rock's extremely important to me, so please collect it for me." Tai Ta doubtfully glanced at the Een Hell stone. He could not understand what was valuable about that rock. It could not be eaten, nor could it be used for cultivation. He did not believe that Jian Chen needed money either. However, he did not hesitate even though he was utterly confused. He immediately walked to the rock after hearing what Jian Chen said. When Tai Ta returned to Jian Chen's side with the rock, the Een Hellstone was no longer the size of a fist like when he had first seen it. Instead, it was even larger than he had imagined and was actually around half a person tall. Most of it had been hidden beneath the ground and only a fist-sized portion had been visible on the surface. Jian Chen only smiled in victory after obtaining the Een Hellstone. At the same time, he struggled to suppress the excitement he felt within. He had finally collected all the materials to forge the azulate swords. Chapter 1293, Domain. Jian Chen had the artifact spirit find a place to hide before entering the artifact space with Tai Ta to heal. If he only relied on the recovery of the chaotic body, he would take a long time to return to his peak condition, so he needed the artifact spirit's help to recover as soon as possible. Tai Ta was injured as well, and after using Form Shatterer, he had basically drained away half of his energy. He needed some time to recover as well. In less than 4 hours, Jian Chen made a full recovery with the artifact spirit's abilities as a Class 8 Radiant Saint Master. He returned to his peak condition while Tai Ta recovered as well. However, as he had overextended himself, He held a Class 8 Xianhuang beast crystal to recover his lost energy. Jian Chen did not disturb Tai Ta and silently left the artifact space by himself. The Class 10 Xianhuang beast that the two of them had slain was still there with its blood across the ground. Jian Chen removed the Class 10 energy crystal from the Xianhuang beast after a tremendous amount of effort. He found the crystal to be the size of a chicken egg, and the energy hidden within was so vast that it caused even him to make a different expression. It was incomparable to Class 9 monster cores. What Jian Chen did not know was that the energy within the energy crystal had far exceeded what a Class 10 monster core possessed. However, since this was the first time he had ever seen a Class 10 monster core, he didn't notice the difference due to the lack of something to compare to. Jian Chen put the energy crystal away. He obviously did not miss the corpse either. He put it in the artifact space and ordered the artifact spirit to store it away. He had already made up his mind. He would give the energy crystal to Tai Ta and take the corpse of the Xianhuang beast for himself. Jian Chen then arrived beside the mortal energy fruit tree and removed 360 crude, wooden boxes. He collected all 360 fruits before taking away all the amethyst spiritual bamboo as well. The sap of the bamboo was a wondrous resource for healing the soul. At the same time, it could refine and strengthen the soul as well, so it was worth far more than the mortal energy fruit. The only pity was that there was not a lot of bamboo, only around 100 stalks. A single drop of sap could only be extracted from each stalk, while healing wounds of the soul would require at least a couple drops if not more. Although Jian Chen had obtained around 100 drops of sap, that amount would not be enough to sustain many usages. Jian Chen discovered some other heavenly resources nearby that were of lower grades, but they were all of the immortal tier. Jian Chen continued on. He followed the tracks of the Class 10 Xianhuang beast that they had just killed and discovered another Xianhuang beast corpse several dozen kilometers away. It was littered with vicious wounds and covered in dried blood. Its skin had been burned to a visible blackness by lightning and the air was filled with a burnt smell. Jian Chen immediately rejoiced, because the Xianhuang beast was also Class 10, and its energy crystal still seemed to be present. Jian Chen observed the surroundings before quickly striding over to the corpse after confirming that there were no dangers. Again, he used a tremendous amount of effort to remove the energy crystal that was slightly smaller than a chicken egg. Jian Chen smiled happily as he stared at the bloodied energy crystal in his hands. Although the energy within was not as plentiful as the previous crystal, it was still a Class 10 energy crystal after all. The energy inside was vast enough to shock Jian Chen. More importantly, he had basically come across this Class 10 energy crystal out of pure luck. Jian Chen happily put the energy crystal and corpse away. He glanced around his surroundings but found no heavenly resources. This must not be the territory of this Class 10 Xianhuang beast. I wonder where it came from, since it attempted to take over the territory with the mortal energy fruit and amethyst spiritual bamboo. Too bad it was weaker and was slain by an even more powerful Xianhuang beast in the end, Jian Chen thought. He looked around and quickly found another set of tracks. This should be the tracks of this dead Xianhuang beast. I should be able to return to its territory if I follow these tracks. I wonder if there's any treasures there, Jian Chen thought. After hesitating for a moment, he immediately hurried along the tracks. Jian Chen moved through the forest carefully with his presence hidden. He had traveled over 1,000 kilometers, and after dealing with several Class 9 Xianhuang beasts along the way, he finally arrived in the original territory of the Xianhuang beast. Jian Chen, however, stopped very far away and did not get any closer before retreating carefully. He could already sense a very powerful presence in the distance. The territory had already been taken over by another Class 10 Xianhuang beast. Although he didn't know the Xianhuang beast's exact strength, Jian Chen had no interest in provoking it even if it was the weakest among the 10th class. He had almost lost his life to a heavily injured Class 10 Xianhuang beast earlier, so even if it was not as powerful as the elephant from before, he and Tai Ta were not strong enough to deal with it if it was in peak condition. At the same time, it was very possible that the current Xianhuang beast had come first and had driven away the original owner, which led to the battle between the original owner and the elephant. Over the next few days, Jian Chen and Tai Ta wandered through the forest and found many heavenly resources. Not only were there various fruits of all 5 attributes, they even came across a few comprehension tea trees and violet cloud peach trees, allowing them to benefit even more. Jian Chen had even come across quite a few materials for forging weapons. He did not recognize any of them, so they were all found by the sword spirits. Although they were not needed for forging the azulate swords, they were important materials for other immortal artifacts. However, the highest grade he found for the peaches and trees was the 5th grade. It was not that he did not come across any higher grades. The higher grades just happened to be guarded by powerful class 10 Xianhuang beasts, which limited Jian Chen to only looking from afar. Jian Chen had already stayed for 2 whole months within the Xianhuang microcosm. He only had a month left before he needed to leave. He would calculate the time every day just to ensure that he would not miss the deadline. I can only stay here for another half a month. I'll need to begin my journey back after that. Half a month should be enough for me to head back, Jian Chen calculated before carefully continuing on. Not only were there class 9 Xianhuang beasts in the forest of unknown size, there were quite a few class 10 Xianhuang beasts as well, so Jian Chen always had to remain vigilant. He would slay class 9 Xianhuang beasts when he came across them and avoid class 10 Xianhuang beasts from far away if he saw them. Although he was unable to detect any class 10 Xianhuang beasts who hid their presences with his strength, he had the assistance of the sword spirits, so he was not worried about class 10 Xianhuang beasts suddenly appearing before him. Jian Chen and Tai Ta continued on for over 10,000 kilometers before being stopped by a barrier completely condensed from Xianhuang qi. The barrier reached into the sky and deep underground, as if it was a natural wall which separated the place into 2 different lands. Xianhuang qi revolved within the barrier, which seemed like mist. It was dense at times and thin at others. It was still possible to see things inside, but they were all blurry and hazy, as if they were obscured by mist. Jian Chen's eyes immediately lit up with a single glance. He could not help but have his heart thump heavily. A hazy violet cloud peach had appeared before him, and with his understanding of the fruit, he could tell that it was of a much higher grade than anything he had obtained before. Ziying, Qing Suo, that's a high-grade violet cloud peach. Jian Chen's breathing became rather ragged. He could recognize heavenly resources of the 6th grade now, but nothing beyond that. Since he was unable to distinguish the grade of the immortal peach within the barrier, it could only mean that it had exceeded the 6th grade. The sword spirits appeared above Jian Chen. They also saw the barrier that was blocking their path, and they became both surprised and joyful. They then looked at the violet cloud peach tree within the barrier. Their eyes lit up but dulled soon after. They said, "Master, that's a 9th grade violet cloud peach. A single one of them can increase your cultivation by 4,500 years. Just one of them is enough for a mortal to become an immortal, but we can't obtain it," said Ziying regretfully. Jian Chen immediately ravished with joy when he heard that it was of the 9th grade, but he became stunned by what Ziying had said at the end. "We can't get it? Why not?" "Master, you can see the barrier before you condensed from Xianhuang qi. This barrier is known as the domain. Most Xianhuang microcosms that have appeared in the past do not possess a domain, and there are extremely few that do, but without any exceptions, all Xianhuang microcosms with domains are of the highest grade. In our immortals world, there's another description of the Xianhuang microcosms. The region outside the domain is the realm of mortals while inside is the realm of immortals, because the interior is a high-level space on the same level as the immortals world. The Xianhuang beasts inside are so powerful that almost all of them are immortals, incomparable to the ones outside. Some Xianhuang beast kings have even reached immortal monarch or immortal emperor," Ziying sternly explained. Jian Chen gasped with that and felt shocked inside. He could not even deal with class 10 Xianhuang beasts, let alone immortal monarch or emperor Xianhuang beast kings. Probably just a breath from these beast kings would be enough to reduce him to nothingness. Chapter 1294, Transformation of the Primordial God Silk, and in the history of our immortals world, There's even been a few times where Xianhuang microcosms have given birth to immortal exalt Xianhuang beast emperors. They are extremely powerful, and even a few immortal emperors of our world fell to them. Since this is a Xianhuang microcosm of the highest grade, it will definitely have a few immortal monarch and emperor Xianhuang beast kings even if there are no immortal exalt beast emperors. With your current strength, you cannot set foot in there, master. Only death awaits you there. This is because the domain can only be entered and not exited. The only way to leave would be to smash through the barrier, and you would need the strength of an immortal monarch to do that, Ziying followed up. Jian Shen completely dropped the thought of obtaining the 9th grade violet cloud peach with that. All he could do was stare helplessly at the barrier. Although he knew that once he become powerful enough in the future, he might be able to enter and collect the heavenly resource, but at that time, the resources would no longer be as valuable as right now to him. But the domain doesn't seem to be as vast as the elemental mountains. How can such powerful Xianhuang beasts thrive in such a small region? Jian Shen thought of something that confused him, so he asked the sword spirits a question. Qing Suo could not help but chuckle at what he asked. Master, you don't understand. This is being bigger on the inside. From the outside, the region really is nowhere near as vast as the elemental mountains, but there is an even vaster world inside. Is that so? Jian Shen was enlightened. It was the same logic with space gates. They seemed exquisite on the surface, but an extremely large space was hidden within. At this moment, the space ring on Jian Shen's finger began to radiate a golden light. A golden mail completely woven from golden threads suddenly flew out, hovering in the air with dazzling golden light. It's the primordial god silk. Why has it come out of the space ring by itself? What's happening? Jian Shen stared at the golden silk mail blankly as it floated in the air. He called out in surprise since he was rather confused. It had already been quite some time since he had obtained the primordial god silk, but it had always been an inanimate object. It just lay in his space ring silently, without exhibiting any movements outside the norm. Yet, it had flown out of his space ring by itself, clearly behaving different from normal. At this moment, even the sword spirit's attention was drawn to the abnormal movements of the primordial god silk. Their gazes became fixed on it. None of them could figure out why it was moving on its own. With the appearance of the primordial god silk, the Xianhuang qi in the barrier of the domain began to pulse in an unstable fashion. Shortly after that, a strand of pure Xianhuang qi broke away and floated through the barrier. As soon as it approached the silk, it was absorbed. The primordial god silk immediately began to give off an extraordinary presence after absorbing the strand of Xianhuang qi. It shone with a golden radiance as it illuminated the surroundings, turning the entire area a golden color. The primordial god silk is actually absorbing Xianhuang qi. This has never happened in the immortals' world. Is this connected to the disaster of the world? Ziying and Qing Suo stared at the process in shock. Everything happening before them had surpassed their understanding. Jian Shen watched everything unfold in utter shock, but his heart was soon filled with much joy. The primordial god silk was extraordinarily tough. Even with his current battle prowess as a saint emperor, he was unable to damage it at all. However, the defenses of the silk were extremely limited as well. It could only block the attacks from saint rulers. Attacks from saint kings would be able to penetrate the silk mail and injure the wearer or even shake the wearer to death from the great force. As a result, Jian Shen hadn't used the primordial god silk after reaching the 3rd layer of the chaotic body. Now that the primordial god silk had absorbed a strand of Xianhuang qi, he could clearly feel it rapidly strengthen and could tell that its presence was growing as well. Soon, a 2nd and 3rd strand of Xianhuang qi was siphoned away from the domain before being absorbed by the primordial god silk, making it glow even brighter. The primordial god silk absorbed a total of 9 strands before stopping. Its golden radiance gradually dulled as well, and completely disappearing a few seconds later. It returned to how it had looked before and dropped out of the air. Jian Shen did not let the primordial god silk hit the ground. He stuck his hand out to catch it with lightning-like speed. Immediately, an odd feeling appeared. It was unclear and indescribable. Jianshan focused all his attention on the primordial god silk in his hand. He knew that the primordial god silk was different from before after absorbing the Xianhuang qi, but he could not tell exactly what was different. However, without a doubt, the primordial god silk's defense was just far more powerful than before. The sword spirits also stared at the primordial god silk fixedly. After a moment of silence, Qing Suo said, "I never thought that the primordial god silk would absorb Xianhuang qi. The world gives birth to the silk, and since it's absorbed Xianhuang qi by itself, does that mean that Xianhuang qi is connected to the calamity of the world? Is this calamity so bad that it requires Xianhuang qi to counter it along with the primordial god silk?" Ziying pondered a little and said, "That might not be the case. Xianhuang qi is an energy of the highest level, just like chaotic force, but it's vastly different at the same time. It might be that the Xianhuang qi benefits the primordial god silk, which was why it had absorbed it. After all, the primordial god silk in Master's hands is still in the form before the calamity, so it possesses a certain level of self-awareness. If it is the primordial god silk after the calamity, its self-awareness will disappear, and it would truly become inanimate, obviously unable to absorb Xianhuang qi. If I have guessed correctly, we can explain why the god artifacts forged from the primordial god silk that have been brought into the Xianhuang microcosms and have appeared in the immortals' world have never absorbed any Xianhuang qi." Jianshan immediately gave up on the thought of asking the sword spirits after hearing their conversation. Even they could not give definite answer. They were guessing. Clearly, even they could not draw a firm conclusion. Jianshan did not want to waste any time at all. He put the primordial god silk away and reluctantly glanced at the 9th grade violet cloud peach one more time before turning around and leaving, full of regret. He definitely could not enter the domain. Without the strength of an immortal monarch, he would not even be able to leave if he did. All he could do was stare at the 9th grade violet cloud peach if he remained. Afterward, Jianshan and Tai Ta continued to wander through the forest. They searched for Class 9 Xianhuang beasts and heavenly resources. Although Jianshan was now in possession of the much stronger primordial god silk, he was still not bold enough to provoke the Class 10 Xianhuang beasts. The primordial god silk could only block attacks from Class 9 Xianhuang beasts after absorbing the Xianhuang qi. It was useless against Class 10 Xianhuang beasts. Several dozen saint kings hovered above the ruins of Mercenary City. They were unmoving, like monks in meditation. Although their eyes were closed, they paid close attention to the ground below. As soon as there was any movements, they would inform the Grand Elder as soon as possible. There were several dozen saint kings scattered within the ruins as well. All of them were formation masters who possessed great achievements in formations. They had worked together to create a killing array. Although they knew that it would be completely useless against Origin Realm experts, they were not discouraged at all. They created formations to the best of their abilities. All the Saint Kings of the Tian Yuan continent had already gathered within the miniature world owned by Mercenary City. Not only did Hao Wu come, even the president of the Radiant Saint Master Union and all the Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters were present. Even most of the human Saint Kings in the Sea Realm had gathered here. The total number neared 1,000. All of them were building up energy and preparing for a battle against the experts of the world of Forsaken Saints, as well as waiting for news from the Sea Race, the Magical Beasts, and the 100 Races. I wonder if the Sea Race, Magical Beasts, or the 100 Races will send reinforcements, the Grand Elder said, worried. The world of Forsaken Saints was just far too powerful. Just by themselves, it would be very difficult for them to repel the invaders. May I ask if you found Senior Houston of the Bloodsword sect? A Saint King looked at an old man in blood-red robes. The old man was the Vice Sect Master Jiang Wang. He shook his head and said, "We've already used a secret technique to contact the former sect master, but we haven't received a reply. I don't know either where the former sect master has gone." Of the 3 human saint emperors, Great Elder Tianjian is currently refining the Divine Hall. The Path Lord has expressed that he will participate when the time comes. It's just that the former sect Master Houston's whereabouts are unknown. I hope he can hurry back in time when the battle erupts, a great elder of a protector clan gently sighed. At this moment, the Grand Elder's expression suddenly changed. He said, "There's news from outside. There has been abnormal movements at the entrance. Let's go." Chapter 1295. Initial scouting. The several dozen formation masters within the ruins of Mercenary City stopped what they were doing and took to the air. All of them stared down with extremely stern expressions. Soon afterward, a space gate ripped open high that was over 10 meters wide opened up in the air. It was the world gate of the miniature world. All the Saint Kings who had been readying themselves in the miniature world owned by Mercenary City surged out. They moved extremely quickly and silently, only flashes were visible. All of them were extremely skilled with manipulating space. In just a few short seconds, almost 1,000 people appeared in the air. Almost all of them were Saint Kings, and only a fraction of them were Saint Rulers. All of them stared down with extremely stern expressions. Powerful pulses of energy originated from deep beneath the ruins. The pulses were extremely unstable, and even they could feel them clearly. "Oh no, they're already coming over," the crisp voice of a child rang from nowhere. Xiaoling silently appeared in the air as she nervously stared at the ground below. Her body was no longer illusionary but fleshly. She was no different from a real human. Many people already knew the identity of the barrier spirit. Many Saint Kings calmed down with Xiaoling's appearance. All of them knew that the barrier spirit was not as simple as they had imagined. The barrier of Mercenary City was gone now, but the barrier spirit did not vanish because of its disappearance. At the same time, her strength belonged to the second level of the origin realm, Returnance. The thought that the continent was protected by a Returnance expert undoubtedly calmed everyone. It was exactly because of Xiaoling that Mercenary City had become the representative of the Tianyuan continent, having surpassed the 10 protector clans now. Dear barrier spirit, the city lord once entered the world of Forsaken Saints and engaged in a great massacre. Now, when the people of that world come to our continent, they will definitely seek for revenge. I wish that you can assist us when they come to our continent and eliminate the intruders. We have to keep them in the tunnel and make time for Great Elder Tianjian. A Saint King Elder of Mercenary City implored Xiaoling as he bowed. Xiaoling was someone who had come from the same age as Mo Tianyun. She was also an origin realm expert, having protected the city for around 1,000,000 years. Her status in the city had been propelled to the level of an ancestor as a result. "I will," Xiaoling firmly nodded her head, but she still appeared to be nervous. It's a pity that the barrier spirit's mind is not mature even though she possesses indomitable battle prowess. It's still at the level of a young girl. She probably lacks experience in battle as well, so if she comes across an opponent of the same level, she will probably fall to a disadvantage. The Grand Elder of Mercenary City secretly sighed to himself, but what was there he could do? All the experts that had gathered there were monsters who had existed for far too long. They could tell with a single glance that the barrier spirit still possessed the mind of a little girl and that she was not mature. They could not help but look at one another with worry. They wondered just how much strength of the Returnance realm she could use. Bang! At this moment, a terrifying ripple of energy appeared from deep underground. IR formed a thick pillar of energy as it broke through the ground and soared into the sky. It caused the entire region of Earth to sink, forming an extremely deep abyss. The various formations that had been cast were destroyed before they could even be used. The pillar of energy was extremely powerful, such that even Saint Emperors would pale when they saw it. The Saint Kings in the air dared not to take it head-on, so they all dodged, but there were still 2 Saint Kings who were a little slow. They were immediately smashed by the pillar and were ripped to shreds before being reduced to ashes. Not even their souls remained. Be careful, this is the wild streams of energy within the spatial tunnel. It surged because of the people from the world of Forsaken Saints, Xiaoling warned, but it was already a little late. At the same time, several dozen vast presences appeared from beneath the ground. The Saint Kings at great perfection from the world of forsaken saints shot into the air like loose arrows. Their vast presences were being sent out. Every single one of them seemed to be in a rather awful connection, but they all gave off a presence that was different from the continent. As soon as the Saint Kings flew into the air, they discovered all the people in the surroundings. They immediately became slightly stunned. They could tell with a single glance that virtually all the people who had gathered here were Saint Kings and that there were not many Saint Kings at great perfection. In the world of forsaken saints, they would be insignificant existences that would fail to raise any attention at all. In reality, they had already prepared to face experts of the origin realm in the other world. They had even thought that they would be surrounded by countless Saint Kings as soon as they had left the spatial tunnel, but they had never thought that they would see so many Saint Kings weaker than themselves and not even a single Saint Emperor. Just when one of the leading Saint Kings from the world of forsaken saints wanted to say something, someone cried out from the encirclement, "They're all Saint Kings at great perfection. They must be the scouts to see our strength. We can't let them escape with their lives. Kill them." The shout set off a chain reaction like the butterfly effect. Close to 1,000 experts moved at the same time, simultaneously using various powerful attacks and Saint-tier battle skills, sending a barrage mercilessly at the several dozen Saint Kings at great perfection. All the Saint Kings dodged, but the attacks were just far too concentrated. From the single wave, half of them became injured and a few had died. "Leave quickly." The Saint Kings at great perfection called out and pulled out the piece of jade they had obtained from the Spirit King. They wanted to use the spatial force within to flee. However, at this very moment, Shaoling moved. She gently swung her little hand and a wall of white lights appeared, quickly sweeping toward the group of people. Some of the faster Saint Kings had already shattered their pieces of jade and were sent away without any obstruction. However, around 20 remaining Saint Kings moved a little slower and were all struck by Shaoling's attack. Their bodies were immediately ripped to pieces while their blood filled the sky. Their souls were instantly wiped out. Chapter 1296, Reinforcements. 1. The great battle above Mercenary City began quickly and quickly came to an end. Everything calmed down in just the blink of an eye. Over 30 corpses from the Saint Kings at great perfection who had come from the world of forsaken saints, remained while around a dozen people managed to escape. They had almost been wiped out then and there. Just 2 Saint Kings on the side of the humans had accidentally been struck by the ripples of energies from the attacks and had passed away. In the clash, all of the humans had finally witnessed how terrifying the Origin Realm experts were. With just a wave of her hand, the barrier spirit of Mercenary City had displayed such a terrifying might, reducing over 20 Saint Kings at great perfection to a bloody mess. How terrifying was that? Immediately, all the people's opinion of Shaoling changed. All of their gazes became filled with deep dread. In the age where Saint Emperors were almost non-existent, Saint Kings at great perfection were basically existences who stood at the very apex. There were an extremely few number of them, yet they were even more fragile than tofu before the barrier spirit. This affected everyone present. At the same time, they all realized that this barrier spirit, who possessed the mind of a little girl, was not soft-hearted at all and was able to kill ruthlessly. The Grand Elder of Mercenary City found it difficult to shift his gaze from her. He sucked in a deep breath and slowly calmed himself down. Afterward, he looked around and said heavily, "You were right with what you had said before. Since the world of forsaken saints has Origin Realm experts, it's impossible for this to be all their power." The group of people from the other world were all Saint Kings at great perfection. They're probably just the scouts, probing the strength of our continent. Once they understand how powerful we are, they will launch a large-scale invasion, so we cannot let the dozen or so Saint Kings at great perfection leave the continent alive. We need to kill them no matter what. The Grand Elder is correct. If we let them return, the world of forsaken saints will learn of our strength. They will definitely have not fear us once they learn that we're actually so weak and, hence, will launch an invasion. This is why we cannot let the scouts from the world of forsaken saints survive. Only by killing them can we prevent our strength from being exposed. I believe that the world of forsaken saints will not act recklessly before they understand how strong we are, another Saint King added after the Grand Elder finished speaking. He was a great elder of a protector clan and was also a Saint King at great perfection. We cannot delay this matter. The 10 protector clans should work together to cast a secret technique to scour the entire continent to find the whereabouts of those people. Elder, immediately send people to tell the 100 races, magical beasts, and the sea race that there have been Saint Kings from the world of forsaken saints who have managed to escape and that it's extremely likely that they've entered their territory, so they should be aware. I think the 3 races will believe the reality of this matter once they see these foreign experts, said the Grand Elder heavily as he gave a command as the one in charge. Many people of the protector clans were reluctant to do this, but none of them dared to show their reluctance. They all followed the Grand Elder's command and used an ancient secret technique to search the continent. Mercenary City was now destroyed, but they had not been weakened because of this. An Origin Realm expert had appeared for them, and even when ignoring the barrier spirit, just Tianjian was enough for them to become speechless. Under the secret technique of the protector clans, the experts from the world of forsaken saints were unable to hide on the continent. They were all found and a group of Saint Kings led by one at great perfection was immediately mobilized to hunt them down. At the same time, the Emperor armaments of the protector clans had been taken out. Other than the Tyrant's Blade School's Emperor armament, all of them had been gathered in Mercenary City. The Emperor armaments were of different shapes. There were blades, swords, daggers, hammers, and a duster. The duster was the Emperor armament of the Pure Heart Pavilion. Although it was different in shape, its power was extraordinarily great. Just think of it as a tool to cleanse your heart, which suits the philosophy of the Pure Heart Pavilion. A Saint King from the world of forsaken saints fell out of the air in a rural mountain range. He quickly looked around, and when he discovered that there was no one around, he finally became relieved. He said, "I've finally escaped." Weird, why weren't there any Saint Emperors? He felt extremely doubtful at what he had just seen. He knew that there were Origin Realm experts in this world, but he also knew that they could not be discovered even when standing right before him if they did not want to. As a result, he mainly took note of the Saint Emperors. Suddenly, the Saint King became stunned. He suddenly gazed at the sky and became shocked. Only a while later did he involuntarily cry out, "There's actually no origin energy here, and the energy of the world is even thinner than our world of forsaken saints. I know now. I finally know why there weren't any Saint Emperors." Becoming a Saint Emperor is extremely difficult under these circumstances. The person immediately became ecstatic when he thought of this. With just the strength visible here, the people of this world could not even put up a fight against the world of forsaken saints. Our sacred spirit hall only needs to send a small group composed of Saint Emperors. That'll be enough to conquer this world. Although this world lacks origin energy and the energy of the world is thin, it's far prettier than our world, the Saint King exclaimed in joy. At this moment, a space gate quickly formed 100 meters away. 3 Saint Kings at great perfection emerged side by side and coldly glared at him. The Saint King from the world of forsaken saints revealed a different in expression and immediately fled into the distance without saying anything more. Chase him down. The 3 Saint Kings immediately began to pursue him. They were all at great perfection, and the foreign Saint King's strength had been greatly reduced since he had left a fragment of his soul in the soul jade, so he was nowhere near as powerful as the experts of the Tian Yuan continent who were in peak condition. He was caught very quickly, and after an intense battle, he was defeated and killed. This occurred in many places across the Tian Yuan continent. All the Saint Kings from the world of forsaken saints were hunted down and were all eliminated in the end. Only one was left alive to be brought back to Mercenary City. However, the people of the Tian Yuan continent could only protect the continent. They were powerless over the experts who had fled beyond the Tian Yuan continent. A Saint King had been sent to the Arctic plains by the spatial force within his piece of jade. He immediately fell out of the sky and began to shiver. It was so cold there that even as a Saint King at great perfection, he found it very difficult to endure. However, just when he planned to observe his surroundings, an icy wind whistled by, and in that moment, he was turned into a lifelike sculpture of ice. The light in his eyes rapidly vanished before becoming glassy. In that short moment, he had died. Chapter 1297, Reinforcements, 2. It was a continent of sand. The color yellow stretched as far as the eye could see, connecting with the sky. It was a wasteland without any signs of life. The sun hung high in the deep blue sky and continued to beat down on the sand, turning the world into something akin to an oven. At this moment, the space above a sand dune began to pulse. A middle-aged man then fell from there. He was in horrible shape and gave off a presence vastly different from the world. "I've finally escaped." The middle-aged man looked around and immediately sighed. He was one of the saints' kings at great perfection from the world of forsaken saints. "I need to hide carefully over the next few days and not reveal myself. I must collect all the information I can so that I can report it to the Spirit King," thought the man. His eyes immediately became filled with respect and admiration when he thought of the Spirit King. At this moment, the sands several kilometers away began to wildly churn. A giant rockman rose up. He seemed to have been hidden in that location long before this Saint King's arrival but had suddenly stood up right now. He rose higher and higher, only stopping after reaching a height of 100 meters. He shone with an earthen yellow light as he gave off a vast presence. The Saint King from the world of forsaken saints stared at the rock giant who had risen from the ground. He was utterly shocked because he had completely missed the fact that there was a Saint King at great perfection hiding nearby. The rock giant seemed to be formed from boulders tightly linked together and seemed to be without flesh. However, he gave off the vigorous presence of life and possessed clear facial features. His eyes shone like torches as he stared unblinkingly at the Saint King from the world of forsaken saints. He was surprised and full of doubt. A long while later, the giant rockman began to speak. He said with a heavy voice, "Not a part of our 100 races nor a human or magical beast, let alone a member of the sea race. You don't belong to this world." With that, the rockman's presence erupted. He walked over and the ground shook with every step as he approached the Saint King in a hostile manner. The Saint King from the world of forsaken saints was stern. He did not engage in conflict with the rockman and immediately ripped open a space gate in an attempt to flee. He could already feel that the rockman was an expert of the same level as him, a Saint King at great perfection. He would have obviously chosen to fight if he was in his peak condition, but after leaving behind a fragment of his soul and the journey through the spatial tunnel, his strength had been reduced. He was not the rockman's opponent. The rockman attacked the air from afar and the sand beneath the space gate immediately rose up. It condensed into pillars of rock in just a single moment as it shot into the sky with powerful ripples of energy. Boom! The terrifying ripples of energy within the pillar of rock exploded as soon as it approached the space gate. The foreign Saint King had no time to block the attack and the terrifying energy wreaked havoc in the surroundings, causing the space to distort. The space gate collapsed before it had even successfully formed. The Saint King acted very decisively as well. Seeing how he was unable to flee through the space gate, he decided to fly. He fused with the surrounding space and used spatial force to escape into the distance. He traveled over 10 kilometers in a single moment. He knew he could not stick around for long since many more experts would arrive very soon. The rockman did not pursue him. He crouched with great difficulty with his cumbersome body and stuck his right hand into the sand. Several dozen kilometers away, the foreign Saint King celebrated after seeing how the rockman did not pursue him, but in the same moment, a hand that was several dozen meters long and completely composed from rock, suddenly emerged from the sand. With a flicker, it shot toward the Saint King with a heavy, powerful force. Caught off guard, the foreign Saint King was struck by the hand and vomited blood. He immediately shot back. However, he stabilized himself very quickly. He did not bother with the rockman, traveling around the hand and heading off in the other direction. "This entire world is my power. You cannot escape," the rockman's heavy voice resonated from several kilometers away. He then stuck his left arm into the sand as well. The foreign Saint King had traveled a few dozen kilometers after changing direction, but he was soon stopped by the left arm of the rockman that had suddenly erupted from the sand. He was injured again and his wounds deepened. The rockman's arms seemed to be able to ignore the distance, able to reach as far as they needed to go. As if he understood that he could not be obstructed by the rockman if he reached a certain altitude, the Saint King charged into the air. He refused to believe that the rock arms could stop him over 10,000 meters in the air. But just when he wanted to take to the upper atmosphere, a green streak of light shot over from above with unbelievable speed. It was a 3-meter-long green arrow, completely condensed from energy. It locked onto the foreign expert's presence and was filled with cold killing intent. It could not be dodged. Spurt. The green arrow passed through the chest of the Saint King, immediately causing him to wail out in agony. His face immediately became rather withered. He seemed ill. Not only did the green arrow deal a heavy wound to him, it had siphoned away a portion of his vital essence as well. A woman slowly descended from the sky, encased in green light. She did not seem very old, only in her 20s. She wore a dress while her green hair flowed down her shoulders. She was an alluring beauty, but her eyes were filled with an icy coldness. She seemed holy and solemn and also possessed a certain level of prestige. A pair of 3-meter-long wings flapped slowly behind her. They shone with an azure luster through the light. The feathers of the wings seemed soft and smooth. They were extremely pretty. She was an elven expert. She held a simple but beautiful wooden bow, covered with simple patterns. However, there was no arrow. The foreign Saint King landed on the sand below and vomited blood several times. When he stood up, the space above him had already begun to pulse in an unstable manner as 4 space gates ripped open simultaneously. 4 experts emerged from them and encircled the Saint King from different directions. Vast presence revolved around the 4 of them. They were all Saint Kings at great perfection. One of them was a 3-meter-tall, extremely burly man. He carried a mace that was even longer than him. His top half was bare, and he wore shorts. Muscles riddled his body, which was impressive to see. He was an expert of the berserkers. They possessed extremely great battle prowess that would skyrocket when they went berserk. They were invincible among people of the same level of cultivation, and some talented individuals could even fight those of a higher cultivation level. It was rumored that the berserkers possessed the bloodline closest to the war god. Opposite him was a short old man. His body was firm and his skin was dark. His arms were extremely thick, possessing explosive power. The old man was an expert of the dwarves. He carried a meter-wide shield on his back, which was much larger than he himself. The shield seemed simple, but it possessed a great force. Chapter 1298, Reinforcements, 3. To the right of the dwarf was a 2-meter-tall man in shorts. He was covered with thick, black fur, making him seem like both a wolf and a person. He possessed the characteristics of a wolf with long, powerful claws. He was a lycanthrope of the 100 races, an existence that was human and wolf. He was not a human nor a magical beast but possessed very great battle prowess that was no weaker than a magical beast's. Very few people among the same level of cultivation were a lycanthrope's opponent, making them a powerful race among the 100 races. Opposite him was a skinny old woman. She was hunchbacked, and all her hair was gray. She seemed extremely old, but balls of green flames flickered in her eyes. They seemed like will-o-wisps, filled with a certain eeriness. The woman was an expert of the flame demons who possessed the natural ability to control fire. However, the fire they used was no regular fire, but green demon fire. The flames lacked heat and could not burn anything physical. Instead, they burned away vitality. Boom! 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 The ground trembled rhythmically as the rockman strode over from afar. He could cross several kilometers with every step, so he moved extremely quickly. A violent pressure of wind appeared from above as the elven expert shot a green streak of light from her wooden bow. She hovered 10 meters in the air. The 6 experts all stared and observed the foreign Saint King in interest. They then began to frown. This person really isn't from our world but from another. The presence he gives off is just not present in our world. Has the envoy of the humans been telling the truth? Wondered the elf in a stern manner. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. I feel like we should bring this person back to the War God Hall immediately, said the old woman of the flame demons. Her voice was hoarse and extremely unpleasant. The dwarf chuckled and said, "We received news from the humans recently that there would be people from another world coming, telling us to prepare ourselves. I had thought that the people would be impressive experts, so I even brought the Heaven's Guard. Turns out it's just a Saint King at great perfection. If we had known earlier, there would be no need for so many of us to come. Let's go and return to the War God Hall first." With that, the dwarf grabbed the foreign Saint King and lifted him onto his shoulders. He then passed through a space gate with the elf, berserker, flame demon and lycanthrope. Only the rockman was left behind. A giant divine hall stood on top of War God Mountain in the center of the wasteland continent. It silently stood there like a primordial beast, unconsciously giving off a suffocating pressure. The divine hall was what guided the spirit of the 100 races. It was also the organization that held supreme authority among the 100 races. It was their faith War God Hall. Several dozen experts of various shapes and sizes gathered within the majestic divine hall. All of them were 5th heavenly layer Saint Kings or higher, all possessing a lot of authority within the hall. They stood in a circle, and at the center lay the foreign Saint King from the world of Forsaken Saints. His face was sallow. Not only had he been extremely injured, his strength had been drained away by a mysterious secret technique, reducing him to just an ordinary person. Close to him stood the 6 Saint Kings at great perfection who had captured him. This included the elf, the flame demon, the berserker, the dwarf, the lycanthrope and the rockman. However, the rockman had shrunken by a lot. Although he was still composed of the same rocks, he had shrunken to the height of 3 meters. This person's presence is extremely odd. It truly is something that does not belong to this world. Has he really come from the world of Forsaken Saints? Has the human envoy been telling the truth? Does the world of Forsaken Saints really does exist? So what if they really do exist? It's impossible for them to be too powerful. The Tian Yuan continent has more than enough strength to deal with them, but they just don't want to overexhaust themselves in the process, so they exaggerated the facts, describing the world of Forsaken Saints as super powerful, so that we, the 100 races, the magical beasts, and the sea race will go to assist them with the problem. The experts in the War God Hall discussed topics the foreign Saint King. There were various discussions, but they had finally confirmed the existence of the world of Forsaken Saints after personally witnessing the foreign Saint King. The foreign Saint King looked past everyone. He was originally a Saint King at great perfection, so he could obviously see through the strength of everyone present. The strongest were only at great perfection while most of them were below that. There was not a single Saint Emperor, so a sliver of mockery appeared in his eyes. He said, "I never thought that you'd actually be so weak without a single Saint Emperor. You probably don't have experts of the origin realm either, but it's completely logical why you don't have any Saint Emperors. This world lacks origin energy and the energy of the world is so thin. You're so weak that the Sacred Hall only needs to send a squadron of Saint Emperors to wipe you all out." "What is he saying?" a Saint King asked in doubt. He could not understand what the foreign Saint King was saying at all. "That's the language of the world of Forsaken Saints. Communicate with him using our souls," the elven Saint King crisply replied, and all the experts present immediately let out their souls to communicate with the foreign Saint King. Very soon, all the experts revealed dramatically different expressions. The dwarf had almost leapt in fright. He cried out, "What? A group of Saint Emperors? You can even form a group with Saint Emperors? Just how many Saint Emperors do you have?" The foreign Saint King's disdain deepened. He coldly responded, "We have countless Saint Emperors. We're just waiting for the spatial tunnel to stabilize and all 500 Saint Emperors gathered in the World Mountains will come over. We only need a single day before we flatten your world. What? 500 Saint Emperors? Impossible. How can you have so many Saint Emperors that there is a countless number? You're exaggerating. The experts were extremely astounded and shock filled their eyes. The strength of the world of Forsaken Saints had frightened them all. They possessed countless Saint Emperors, and they would be sending over 500 right from the start. Probably even in ancient times, that would be an almost unstoppable force. Not to mention that the 4 races of this world no longer possessed a strength that could be compared to the strength that had appeared in ancient times. I've already understood the strength of this world, so I've completed my mission. The armies of my world will descend here soon. We will be seeing each other again, the Saint King sneered before shattering his own soul through a secret technique. He collapsed on the ground and no longer moved. He was dead. He knew that the 100 races would not let him go and would possibly use various methods to torture him. As a result, he acted in a straightforward manner, committing suicide. He would be revived after this death anyway. Chapter 1299, Reinforcements. 4. No one could stop the foreign Saint King from committing suicide, nor did any of the 100 races experts think of why he committed suicide in such a straightforward manner. The atmosphere within the divine hall became extremely heavy. Several dozen Saint Kings stood there sternly. The news that they had learned was suffocating. All of them had become deeply stunned by the foreign Saint King. The world of Forsaken Saints will launch a large-scale invasion soon. Looks like they want to conquer this world, and the humans probably won't be the only people affected. The magical beasts, us 100 races, and the sea race probably can't avoid this either. What should we do right now? An old man with peppered hair inquired after a long time. He was a hall elder of the War God Hall, a Saint King at great perfection. If the person is telling the truth, the world of Forsaken Saints is so powerful that none of the races can stop it. They possess many Saint Emperors, where even if we all work together, we're not their opponent, replied the old woman from the Flame Demons. Her voice was hoarse and her face was sunken. She was also a hall elder. In my opinion, we should forget about our enmity with the humans and magical beasts for now and temporarily work with the humans to deal with the threat. Otherwise, the 100 races will probably cease to exist, said a woman who seemed to be in her 20s. She was elegant and possessed alluring beauty. She gave off a natural, divine presence. She was the expert of the elves. Although she seemed to be very young, she was actually several thousand years old. All the Saint Kings in the Divine Hall fell silent. Their enmity with the humans and magical beasts was deep, so temporarily suppressing it to work with them really was rather difficult. However, the threat of the world of Forsaken Saints was suffocating them as well. They all felt extremely uneasy because of that threat. Compared to the outcome of becoming extinct, we should endure this temporary alliance. Everyone's heard what the foreigner said. Once the world of Forsaken Saints makes it to our world, it's extremely likely that we will be wiped out. I suggest we leave behind the enmity for now and deal with the world of Forsaken Saints first, said a hunchbacked old man. He seemed ancient and was also a Saint King at great perfection. He did not have much time until the end of his life and was also one of the most senior members of the War God Hall. He possessed much prestige. The War God Hall was where the faith of the 100 races lay and was a divine force in the eyes of all inhabitants of the continent. The several dozen Saint Kings gathered there was not even a third of all of the Saint Kings. Quite a few of the Saint Kings present were at great perfection. They all came from different races. I agree with Elder Chi Tian and Queen Bai Sha. Let's put down our enmity for now. A long while later, a hall elder finally expressed his agreement. With someone leading them, the matters following happened much smoother. All the experts gathered there came to an agreement. They all understood that the disagreements of the past were nothing if they could not survive. They were just forgetting about the disagreements temporarily. At the same time, the news that the scouts from the world of Forsaken Saints had fled reached the Beast God Hall in the shortest amount of time possible, raising a large amount of concern from all the experts there. In order to capture the foreign Saint Kings that may have fled there, a large group of Class 8 magical beasts were mobilized to search the entire continent. Even the 3 Saint Emperors were alerted. The presence of the foreign Saint Kings differed from the Saint Kings of this world, so even after hiding themselves in crowds of people, they were as eye-catching as a lantern in the dark. It was very easy for them to be recognized. With the 3 Saint Emperors participating as well, the few Saint Kings were captured very quickly. Other than a few who had been slain on the spot, a few people were left alive to be brought back to the Beast God Hall to be interrogated. However, the 3 Saint Emperors never imagined that the Saint Kings would commit suicide before they could even be interrogated after being brought back. They failed to obtain any information from them at all. Even though that was the case, the 3 Saint Emperors became extremely stern. The world of Forsaken Saints really did exist, and it was extremely possible for them to actually possess the strength described by the humans. They may even have Origin Realm experts. The 3 Saint Emperors gathered on the 98th floor of the Beast God Hall. They all stared sternly at the corpses as the Saint Emperor of the Peng clan, Zhangxiong, said, "This is a significant matter. I will immediately set off for the Tian Yuan continent." As soon as he said that, Zhangxiong was reduced to a faint image. This was an afterimage he had left behind. He had already traversed several thousand kilometers in a single moment. Even without the use of a space gate, he could reach astonishing speeds. Kaiser and Lankiros remained where they were. They currently possessed an unnatural paleness, still injured from being attacked by Shaoling. The empty space above Mercenary City was filled with people. After the arrival of the foreign Saint Kings, they did not return to the miniature world. They all stood guard outside, carefully observing the situation of the tunnel. The spatial tunnel would spray out violent flows of energy from time to time, so it was extremely dangerous down there. Even Saint Kings at great perfection might end up facing death if they were caught by the energy there, so the Saint Kings did not go beneath the ground. They could only guard above. The news has been sent long ago. I wonder how the sea race, the magical beasts, and the 100 races will respond. Will they send reinforcements? Not only does this matter affect the peace of our continent, it threatens the 3 other races as well. We have to persuade them no matter what. We're just far too weak just by ourselves. It's a pity that there are too few supreme experts in this age. If we possessed the glory of the ancient times, we would have not need to fear the world of Forsaken Saints. Haven't you heard what the barrier spirit said? The strength of the world of Forsaken Saints has greatly exceeded anything we can anticipate. We might not even have been able to fend off their invasion in ancient times. Back then, the city lord Imo Tianyun had actually entered the world of Forsaken Saints all by himself and slew many experts. He even killed quite a few Origin Realm experts. That is just unbelievable. He truly is worth being known as the strongest human expert. He's probably already reached the peak of the Origin Realm with his strength, if only the city lord was still present. He could probably wipe out the entire world of Forsaken Saints all by himself, and we would not have to guard here while at the end of our wits. I wonder when Great Elder Tian Yuan will finish refining the Divine Hall. The Divine Hall holds all our hopes now. Everyone discussed the problems they faced with one another, and between them lay a foreign Saint King with his eyes closed. The heavenly enchantress currently sat by his side with her zither while the Saint Kings around them glanced towards her with gazes filled with deep dread. At this moment, the space several kilometers away began to violently distort. A space gate rapidly formed and rich water-attributed energy flowed out. The interior of the space gate flickered with blue light as a person enveloped with water blue light slowly emerged. Her face was obscured, only revealing a hazy but curvy figure. Behind her followed over 10 people of various ages. They were all beyond the 5th heavenly layer as Saint Kings, but all of them hid their presences as they politely stood behind her. Chapter 1300, Yadrium, it's the experts of the sea race. Fantastic, the reinforcements of the sea race have come, just as I had expected. The first group of reinforcements would be the experts of the sea race. We established a very deep enmity with the 100 races in ancient times while the experts of the Beast God continent trespassed our land several years ago, resulting in an intense clash. Only the Sea race has not fallen out with us. The leading person is actually a Saint Emperor. Fantastic, we now have one more Saint Emperor. The humans fell into a hubbub with the arrival of the Sea race experts. All of them stood in the air as they stared at them in joy. They were deeply curious. To them, the people of the Sea race were relatively mysterious beings since Saint Emperors could not pass through the protective barrier around the Sea realm. As a result, many of them had only heard of their existence, but none of them had never seen them in person before. Even more gazes were fixated on the woman enveloped in blue light who stood at the very front. They revealed respect. Although the woman did not give off any presence at all, many of them could already tell that she was a Saint Emperor. The Grand Elder of Mercenary City joyfully flew over with a group of Saint King Elders, which was followed by many other Saint Kings. This group included the important figures from the 10 Protector clans as well as various large organizations of the Tianyuan continent. I am the Grand Elder of Mercenary City, and I'd like to welcome the esteemed guests of the Sea race to our world, the Tianyuan continent, the Grand Elder loudly said from afar. I am the Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall from the Sea realm, Yadrium. You have been far too kind, replied the Hall Master nonchalantly as she bathed in blue light. So it's the esteemed Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall. You have gone far to travel so much and we have failed to welcome you from afar. Please forgive us, the Grand Elder conventionally answered in a politeful manner before glancing past the people behind the Hall Master. He was secretly shocked. All the experts behind her wore the same attire, allowing him to understand that they were all experts of the Sea Goddess Hall with a single glance. However, what truly shocked the Grand Elder and the other Saint Kings was that there were actually 4 Saint Kings at great perfection among the Sea race party, and almost all the other people were at the 8th or 9th heavenly layer. Only a small portion of them were of the 7th heavenly layer, and no one was weaker than that. Although many of them had never visited the Sea realm, they possessed a rough understanding of the Sea race. There were many Saint Kings among the Sea race, but not all of them were a part of the Sea Goddess Hall. Even with that being the case, the Sea Goddess Hall could easily mobilize 4 Saint Kings at great perfection and around a dozen experts beyond the 7th heavenly layer just by themselves. This was equivalent to several Protector clans working together. At the same time, all of them understood that the Saint Kings brought by Yadrium were probably just a tip of the iceberg for the Sea Goddess Hall. This was because the overall strength of the Sea race far exceeded the Tianyuan continent. There were far more Saint Rulers and Saint Kings there than the Tianyuan continent. There is no need to be so polite, Grand Elder. May I ask of the situation of the world of Forsaken Saints? The Hall Master gently inquired as the blue light around her grew brighter, permeating the surroundings with dense, water-attributed energy. No one could see her true appearance while the other expert behind her stood there silently. The Grand Elder quickly told her everything he knew about the world of Forsaken Saints. He stressed that they had a very powerful origin realm expert that even the barrier spirit could not handle. Yadrium fell silent. Only after quite a long while did she say, I've already sensed the spatial tunnel deep underground. The violent streams of energy are indeed extremely terrifying, and they flow from the world of Forsaken Saints to the Tianyuan continent. It is extremely easy for the people from the other world to come over, but if we want to go over, we'll have to travel against the current of the energy. Even Saint Emperors will face danger. Yadrium was rather stern as she walked toward the captured Saint King. Only now did the heavenly enchantress slowly open her eyes and stand up. She calmly observed Yadrium. She was the only person who did not welcome the Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall among the humans. Yadrium noticed the heavenly enchantress as well and carefully observed her. A sliver of surprise appeared in her eyes since she was unable to see through the heavenly enchantress' strength. In her eyes, the heavenly enchantress seemed like a cloud of mist. She was hazy and unrealistic. Yadrium was secretly surprised. This was the first time she had come across something so odd. Even the 2 other Saint Emperors in the Sea realm were unable to make her feel like that. Yadriam stared at the heavenly enchantress deeply before turning her gaze to the unconscious Saint King at great perfection. Esteemed Hall Master, this was the expert from the world of forsaken saints that we captured. We originally planned to gain an understanding the other world through him, but who would have expected him to use a secret technique to obliterate his own soul? Fortunately, Muir controlled the situation with her zither within that crucial moment and knocked him unconscious, the Grand Elder explained by the side. A sliver of shock flashed through Yadriam's eyes. She said, to control a Saint King at great perfection in such an easy manner. You have my admiration. Even Saint Emperors are unable to do something like that. Hao Wu hid among the crowd with an ashen face. His feelings were mixed. He was indeed extremely surprised by his daughter's accomplishments, and even wondered if the cold heavenly enchantress was her daughter or not. Her strength had increased at an astonishing rate over the past few years. Hao Wu had come here several days ago and had discovered his daughter long ago. However, he knew that his daughter still hated him, unwilling to forgive him as a father. Hao Wu had wanted to greet his daughter many times over the past few days, but he chose to do nothing in the end. He knew that he had already been discovered with his daughter's current strength, but she continued to ignore him as a father. She even treated him like glass, making his heart ache. Shangguan Xiaoyan, I can never make it up to you for what happened in the past. Hao Wu sighed inside as sorrow and regret appeared in his eyes. Chapter 1301, Gathering of the Four Races. Yadriam's gaze stopped on the foreign Saint King for a while. She asked, have you obtained any information from this person? What about the strength of the world of forsaken saints? How great is the disparity between ours and theirs? The Grand Elder of Mercenary City said, Esteemed Hall Master, the foreign expert almost dispersed his own soul. Shangguan Muir managed to stop him in time, but we only have one chance to ask him questions. We will need Shangguan Muir to explain the exact situation. Yadriam immediately looked at Shangguan Muir. Among so many human experts, she was the only person that Yadriam treated seriously. Even with the Path Lord of Carnal Desires hiding in the surroundings, she did not spend too much time paying attention to him. Shangguan Muir glanced past the foreign Saint King and said with a cold voice, this person has already used a secret technique to destroy his soul. Although I've controlled it with my zither and made him unconscious, his soul will continue to collapse once he awakens and no one will be able to stop it. Even I can only slow it down with my zither. As a result, we only have this one chance to ask questions. Time is very short, and we might not even be to extract all the information we need. We can interrogate him after the experts of the four races have gathered, just in case someone says that we're exaggerating the strength of the world of forsaken saints. Then let's wait for the magical beast and the experts of the 100 races, Yadriam gently replied and ended the conversation there. She stepped aside with the sea race experts quietly. The sky fell silent. After the arrival of the Hall Master, all the human experts had become quiet. They stopped conversing with one another. The Saints Kings from Protector clans and a few stronger ancient clans all glanced at the experts of the sea race. The sea race was extremely powerful, so they all wanted to get on good terms with them to improve their clan status through the connection. However, they dismissed that thought when they saw how cold the sea race experts behaved. Esteemed Hall Master, may I ask why the Heaven's Spirit Hall and Serpent God Hall haven't sent reinforcements? The Grand Elder asked after a long while. He knew that the sea race possessed 3 Saint Emperors. They were an extremely powerful force, and if all 3 Saint Emperors had come, they would feel more confident repelling the world of forsaken saints. I have already alerted the Heaven's Spirit Hall and Serpent God Hall. However, whether they come or not is up to them, answered Yadriam. At this moment, the space far away began to violently ripple. Immediately, all the humans turned their heads to look in that direction. The rippling space captured the attention of many people. Just a single ripple in space was enough to alert them since it represented more reinforcements. As the space gate formed, a white-robed, ruddy old man stepped out. He was one of the 3 Saint Emperors of the Beast God continent, Zhangqiong. Behind him were around a dozen tall, bulky men. They were all Class 8 magical beasts in human form, but there were only 2 Saint Kings at great perfection among all of them. Even the other people were much weaker than the party of sea race experts. So the Peng Emperor has come personally. I am the Grand Elder of Mercenary City, and I have failed to welcome you from afar. Please forgive me. The Grand Elder immediately went up to welcome them with smiles. Mercenary City had basically become the leader of the continent, so he obviously needed to welcome them as the Grand Elder. Although some conflicts had occurred between the Tian Yuan continent and the Beast God continent back then, the threat of the foreign world was far more significant, so they needed to set aside their disagreements. Right when Sangxiong had arrived, another space gate rapidly formed nearby. The space gate was much larger than gates the sea race and magical beasts had created. This one was 10 meters wide and 20 meters tall. A vast presence immediately surged out of it, similar to a flood. It was so tremendous that the air and clouds in the surroundings began to churn. Figures emerged from the space gate one after another. They were of all sorts of shapes and sizes. There were handsome and pretty winged elves, short and bulky dwarves, and stalwart, dark-skinned berserkers. There were also rock men, completely composed from stone, and so on. Many human experts began to smile from the bottom of their hearts when they saw the arrival of these people. At that moment, all 4 races had gathered together. The pressure the Tian Yuan continent would be facing would decrease a lot now. I never thought that so many members of the 100 races would come, a human expert sighed in surprise. There were over 200 Saint Kings from the 100 races with quite a few at great perfection. They basically made up a third or even half of the total force assembled here. Looks like the 100 races want to put their lives on the line against the world of Forsaken Saints. They've even brought their trump cards, a great elder sighed. Many of them could sense the energy ripples of forbidden artifacts. There was more than one present. The 100 races want go all out against the world of Forsaken Saints? Or are they trying to invade our continent by using this as an opportunity? They've brought so many forbidden treasures, the treasures of their clans, a human expert softly murmured. They all felt like the 100 races were putting a little too much effort into it. They were nowhere near as shrewd as the sea race or the magical beasts, who had only sent around a dozen people to scout out the situation and only planned to send further reinforcements after personally witnessing the strength of the foreign world. The Grand Elder hurried over to warmly welcome them, completely forgetting about that fact that the 100 races had attacked Mercenary City recently. The Hall Elders of the 100 races greeted the Grand Elder as well, but many of them looked at the magical beasts with flames of anger. The true enemies of the 100 races was not the Tian Yuan continent, but the Beast God continent, because the Beast God continent had originally been occupied by them. In the end, the Winged Tiger God led the magical beasts in an invasion, chasing away the 100 races from their land. This was what led to the invasion of the Tian Yuan continent. As a result, the 100 races' hatred for the Tian Yuan continent was not as deep as what was imagined, even though a shocking war had occurred in ancient times, resulting in heavy casualties on both sides. They were the invaders after all. The experts of the 100 races clearly understood that the matter at hand was to deal with the world of Forsaken Saints, and this was not the time to resolve their disagreements. As a result, they just stared at the magical beasts angrily, but they did not end up fighting. Sangxiong stood calmly as he rested with his eyes closed, ignoring the people from the 100 races. However, the magical beasts behind him were unable to remain as calm as Sangxiong. All of them felt extremely angry, but when they saw that the 100 races had brought so many experts along with so many forbidden artifacts, they dared not to act recklessly. Chapter 1302, Shock. The atmosphere became rather stern because of the arrival of the 100 races and magical beasts. Even the various human experts could sense the changes. They all fell silent as they looked at the magical beasts and 100 races. Since all 4 races have gathered, let's awaken this person from the world of Forsaken Saints. Let's learn about the world of Forsaken Saints' strength from him, the sea goddess said at this moment, disrupting the heavy atmosphere. The esteemed Hall Master is correct. The matter of the world of forsaken saints is most important, so please do it, heavenly enchantress, said the pavilion master of the Pure Heart Pavilion. Shangguan Mu'er will be troubling you with this matter because only you have the ability out of all of us, said the Grand Elder. Although he knew that the heavenly enchantress' strength had far exceeded his own, he still referred to her by her name, because the elders had become acquainted with her long ago. They were all her seniors. Everyone looked at the foreign Saint King when the world of forsaken saints was mentioned, including the magical beasts and the experts of the 100 races. There were also magical beasts and 100 races who stared at the heavenly enchantress for a while. They could not help but reveal shocked gazes. The heavenly enchantress was veiled, which obscured her face, but that veil was unable to hide her beautiful body. However, none of them could see through her strength. The experts of the 100 races remained quiet. They had captured a foreign Saint King themselves on the wasteland continent and had learned some shocking news from him, but they did not plan to announce the news right now. They wanted to see if this captured Saint King would give the same information they had received as well. The heavenly enchantress nodded at the Grand Elder before holding her zither with a single hand. She used her slender right hand to gently strum the strings, immediately producing a soft, pleasant sound. The music was extremely beautiful, as if it was divine. It was filled with an endless charm, enough to enchant people. All the experts in the surroundings were heavily affected, unknowingly being carried away by the music. They had sunken into it involuntarily, falling into a daze. They all roused the next moment. When they thought about what had just happened, all of them broke out into a cold sweat from the shock they felt. The human experts were relatively calmer since they had already witnessed just how powerful the heavenly enchantress was. However, the experts of the sea race, the 100 races, and the beast god continent were utterly astounded. They all looked at the heavenly enchantress in shock, and some of them even felt fear well up inside them. Among them were hall elders at the great perfection of Saint King. The music was terrifying enough to even affect them. They also knew that the music was not intentionally targeting them, or none of them would have been able to withstand it. Sanxiong snapped open his eyes as he looked at the heavenly enchantress in disbelief. A sliver of shock appeared in his eyes. Even Yadrium looked at the heavenly enchantress again, gazing deeply at her back. This was because even the two of them felt a slip in their consciousness from the music. Who is this person? How does she have such great accomplishments with soul attacks? Why have I never heard of her? Sanxiong thought. An extremely rare sliver of fear actually appeared in his gaze. Magical beasts like him possessed greater battle prowess than humans, but they possessed weaker souls at the same time. Magical beasts feared experts who were skilled in soul attacks the most. Under the influence of the music, the foreign Saint King finally began to slowly awaken. However, his eyes were no longer clear, but glassy. His soul was completely controlled by the terrifying music. The person's soul began to rapidly collapse as soon as he woke up. He had already used a secret technique to annihilate his own soul, but the process had been stopped after falling unconscious. As soon as he woke up, no one could control his collapsing soul anymore. Even the heavenly enchantress was only able to reduce the rate at which it collapsed, and she could not reduce the rate very much. The heavenly enchantress asked many questions regarding the world of forsaken saints. The Saint King responded in a straightforward manner and answered every single questions. All the experts in the surroundings heard his answers. Around half a minute later, his soul collapsed, and he was reduced to a cold corpse. However, the heavenly enchantress managed to obtain a lot of information in that short time, gaining an even more detailed understanding of the other world's power. The saint rulers and saint kings there were as plentiful as ants, and even saint emperors were numerous. Other than that, there were over 40 origin realm experts. 33 were receival, 8 were returnants, along with an even more terrifying spirit king. Everyone fell silent in the air as the corpse hit the ground. They had all become speechless from the shock. They were all extremely solemn, and some of them had even become sheet white, without a single shred of blood at all. The strength of the world of forsaken saints had greatly exceeded anything they had imagined. They were basically unstoppable. Even in ancient times, the four races would not have been their opponent if they worked together. In ancient times, there were the four champions along with many saint emperors, but even with the four races combined, the amount of saint emperors could not be described as innumerable. The foreign world strength had already reached an extremely terrifying level to all of them. We cannot let them come over. We have to stop them no matter how great the price is, said the Grand Elder with a heavy voice. With their strength, it would be an absolute disaster if they managed to set foot on the Tianyuan continent. Xiaoling also appeared in the air. Her face was filled with worry as she said, "How can they be so powerful? It'll be bad now. If only Master was still here." Chapter 1303, Shocking Lightning. 1. All four races treated this news like this would be end of the world after learning the strength of the foreign world in detail. They were just too powerful. Once they made it to the continent, even if the four races did not get wiped out, they would be reduced to slaves. The authoritative hall elders of the War God Hall immediately returned to the wasteland continent to gather all their power. Sanxiong left without the magical beasts, personally hurrying back to the Beast God Hall to tell the two other Saint Emperors about what he had learned. Yedrium sent out several messages one after another as well and began to gather all the power of the Sea Goddess force. At the same time, she contacted the two other hall masters. Soon afterward, around 200 more races Saint Kings arrived on the Tianyuan continent through space gates. They had sent 2/3 of their total force in order to repel the invasion. A large group of experts had hurried over from the Beast God continent as well. They were all Class 8 magical beasts, amounting to over 600. Even Lankiros and Kaiser had come. Their total number was much more than the experts of the 100 races. The Beast God continent was more powerful than both the 100 races and the Tianyuan continent. Not only did they possess Saint Emperors, the number of Saint Kings and Saint Rulers exceeded the two other continents by quite a lot. The Class 8 magical beasts that had hurried over was probably just a relatively larger portion with the whole continent in perspective. Other than that, over 400 Saint Kings had hurried over from the Sea Realm. All of them were experts within the territory of the Sea Goddess Hall. Not a single person from the Heaven's Spirit Hall or Serpent God Hall came. The power gathered on the Tianyuan continent rapidly surged with the reinforcements from the 100 races, the magical beasts, and the sea race. The numbers of Saint Kings in Mercenary City had exceeded 2,000, and there were even 5 Saint Emperors. Only Houston and the Hall Masters of the Heaven's Spirit Hall and the Serpent God Hall were absent. The Bloodsword sect poured all their efforts into searching for Houston, but they could not find a single sign of him no matter what they tried, as if Houston had suddenly disappeared from the continent. The Vice Sect Master of the Bloodsword sect, Jiang Wang, secretly panicked. Now that such a significant matter had occurred on the Tianyuan continent, the two most important figures of the Bloodsword sect were actually not present at all. Not only had Houston vanished from the map, they could not even contact Jianchen. Kaiser and Lankiros stood there with rather pale faces. Everyone present could feel that their presences were rather unstable, clearly injured. Kaiser glanced at Xiaoling in some fear. His lips trembled as if he wanted to say something, but he held back in the end. Lankiros was the same. After a moment of hesitation, he said to the Grand Elder, "The battle prowess of Saint Emperors is extremely important to repel the foreign invasion. Before they arrive, we need to recover our peak condition, or we might not be of any use at all. It's just that there's a strand of origin energy rampaging about within us, and we need to use half of our energy to suppress it. We probably can't even use half of our strength." The Grand Elder glanced at Kaiser and the Tiger Emperor as he smiled deeply. He knew that the two Saint Emperors had been wounded by the barrier spirit and were still injured. They wanted to ask Xiaoling to remove the origin energy within them, except they found it rather unwilling to ask in such a straightforward manner. The Grand Elder hovered in the air as he bowed courteously to Xiaoling. He said, "Esteemed barrier spirit, can you remove the origin energy within the two seniors, so they can recover their peak strength and increase our overall defensive force?" Xiaoling frowned and looked at the two Saint Emperors rather unhappily. She said in an angry manner, "Humph, so much for bullying Big Brother. If it weren't for the fact that the bad people from the other world want to come over, I would have never bothered with you." Xiaoling waved her hand as the strand of origin energy immediately flew out of their bodies, having been taken back by Xiaoling. The two of them immediately felt their bodies lighten. The strand of energy that they had been utterly helpless against had finally left their bodies, so they immediately rejoiced. Without any hesitation, they sat down to heal. They returned to their peak condition with their bodies of magical beasts very quickly now that they were free from the origin energy's torture. At this moment, a figure appeared far away as he flew over hurriedly. It was a white-robed, middle-aged man with a graceful and striking appearance. However, his face bore an evil feeling. "Human Saint Emperor, you're finally willing to come out. I was wondering how long you had planned on staying hidden," Yedrium said with a heavy tone. Her voice was extremely cold with a sliver of killing intent present. The middle-aged man was the Path Lord of Carnal Desires. He had arrived long ago, except he had kept himself hidden. He had hidden himself and peeped on Yedrium many times already. His eyes were filled with lust, so he established a very bad impression of himself in Yadrium's eyes. The Path Lord of Carnal Desires clasped his hands at Yadrium before glancing at the heavenly enchantress. He then said to the barrier spirit, "The matters before were my mistake. Please purge the origin energy within me, Lord Barrier Spirit." Xiaoling softly snorted and removed the origin energy within him rather reluctantly. She found the three of them to be extremely annoying when they had abused Jian Chen before. It was just that they needed all the power they had now that they faced against the threat of the invading world. The Path Lord also became excited when he sensed that the power that tortured him for many years had vanished. He immediately ingested a high-class radiant spirit pill and began to heal. The heavenly enchantress stared at him coldly and said icily, "Path Lord, if it happens a second time, I will not forgive you." Everyone present looked at the heavenly enchantress when she spoke. They all looked at her in shock. No one had thought that she was bold enough to threaten a Saint Emperor. The Path Lord's face hardened before immediately darkening. He looked at her coldly and sneered, "Your way of the zither indeed possesses unfathomable power, enough to even affect Saint Emperors slightly. However, I practice the path of desires and specialize in refining my soul. My soul is incomparable to any other Saint Emperors in strength, so do you really think your little tricks can threaten me?" Chapter 1304, Shocking Lightning. 2. The Heavenly Enchantress was fearless. She coldly stared at the Path Lord of Carnal Desires and emotionlessly replied, "It's not up to you to say whether my way of the zither can affect you or not. Let's try it." The heavenly enchantress had already placed her zither in front of her as her slender right hand lay on the strings. Clearly, she had made preparations for battle. The Path Lord suddenly began to glare. His eyes shone with an almost visible light as he stared at the heavenly enchantress in shock. His evilness grew heavier, and he sneered, "You want to take me on? Let me put this straight first. If you lose, you'll become my 91st wife. Are you willing?" The heavenly enchantress' face sank as her eyes instantly became filled with killing intent. However, before she could respond, Yadrium flew from the crowd and coldly said to him, "What a shameless human Saint Emperor. You're a disgrace to the humans. Since you're so confident, I'll take you on. If I lose, you can do whatever you want to me, but if you lose, your life is mine." With that, Yedrium began to shine brightly with blue light as an extremely terrifying amount of water-attributed energy poured out of her. It caused the surrounding space to violently shake and the energy of the world began to rampage. The vast presence from her also made the surroundings shake, boldly enveloping the Path Lord. The Path Lord's body immediately sank. The tremendous pressure pressed his clothes against his body as his face darkened in that moment. He had never thought that the Hall Master would begin fighting right now, nor did he expect her to be so powerful. She had caught him by surprise. The three Saint Emperors from the Beast God continent became rather stern. All of them grimly stared at the hall master. Although they had not fought Yadrium before, just her presence allowed them to sense her strength. Even Kaiser was not confident he could defeat her. 3 of the 4 champions from the ancient times have fallen. Only the sea goddess is still alive. The hall master of the sea goddess hall has definitely obtained the legacy of the sea goddess, which is why she's so strong. She's even grasped the shocking secret techniques of the sea goddess, so her strength cannot be underestimated. I cannot fight her as an opponent. Similar thoughts crossed Kaiser and Lankiro's mind. The fear they felt for Yadrium had surpassed their fear for the heavenly enchantress. This was because they had both thought of the great possibility that she was guided by an Origin Realm expert. Her strength could not be compared to any regular Saint Emperor. The Path Lord's face darkened very much. He yearned to take the heavenly enchantress under him, to have her serve him every day. He would never let such a beautiful woman go. Although her soul attacks were very powerful, he was confident he could deal with them, but that was not the case with Yadrium. At that moment, the Path Lord was caught in a conundrum. If he were to proceed, it would be extremely likely that he would end up fighting Yadrium, but if he were to hold back, he would feel very embarrassed as a mighty Saint Emperor. If I sever all my emotions and desires and complete my divine method, why would I still fear the hall master of the sea goddess hall? The Path Lord harbored anger inside. He had a very strong feeling that if he completely severed his emotions and desires, he would definitely undergo a rebirth and transformation and become an Origin Realm expert. It was just he could not make it past the last few stages. Humph, you evil person. If you bully brother's friends again, I will never let you go. I will beat you until your soul disperses. Xiaoling viciously waved her fist at the Path Lord. She was extremely angry. She could feel a very dense feeling of familiarity from the heavenly enchantress. The feeling came from Jian Chen, so Xiaoling knew that the heavenly enchantress relationship with Jian Chen was something else. This was why she was so protective of the heavenly enchantress. The Path Lord immediately revealed a different expression because of what Xiaoling had said. He only felt some fear for the hall master, but he felt terror from the bottom of his heart for Xiaoling. He had personally experienced Xiaoling's power. Although she seemed like a naive little girl, the power she possessed was so terrifying that it was enough to slay Saint Emperors with a wave of her hand. He also knew that even if he severed all his desires and emotions, he would still not be Xiaoling's opponent since he would reach Receival at most. Xiaoling was at returnance. All the experts here watched on. Yadrium, the Path Lord of carnal desires, and the heavenly enchantress had all become the center of attention. There were quite a few people among the experts of the 100 races and sea race who paid attention to Xiaoling. Many of them felt extremely surprised and shocked that the barrier spirit of Mercenary City was actually an Origin Realm expert. A terrifying pulse of energy suddenly appeared from afar while the Path Lord was caught in this dilemma. Even though it was several 100,000 kilometers away, all the Saint Kings gathered there could clearly sense it. The terrifying pressure shocked all of them. They no longer paid attention to Yadrium and the others. They shifted their gazes away and sternly stared in the direction the energy had come from. What's happening over there? Why has such a shock pulse of energy appeared, where even the mysteries of the world have been affected and have become disordered? Have the people of the other world found another entrance and are coming to our continent through that tunnel? That's extremely likely. This matter is extremely important. Let's go over and check the situation out immediately. The Saint Kings all discussed with one another before rapidly creating space gates and leaving. Very soon, half of the people there had left, only leaving behind around 1,000 Saint Kings to keep guard and carefully observe the movements of the tunnel. The Path Lord used this opportunity to break free from the situation. He was the first one to hurry over. He was soon followed by the 3 Saint Emperors of the Beast God continent and the Hall Master. They all traveled in the direction of the terrifying energy pulse. It had already become gloomy over Flame City. The moment before, the sun had been shining strong, but now, a thick layer of dark clouds had drifted over from somewhere. They enveloped the entire sky, blotting out the sun and causing the entire world to darken. Lightning flickered within the dark clouds as heavy sounds of thunder rang out from time to time, echoing through the entire region. The terrifying sound made the ground shake, and at the center of the clouds was a rapidly spinning whirl. Directly below the whirl was the tungsten alloy mine several dozen kilometers away from the city. Chapter 1305, Shocking Lightning, 3. Not only was everyone in Flame City alerted to the changes, but even the people within the expanse of the dark clouds were alarmed by the sudden change in the sky. The dark clouds had arrived just far too quickly, and they were filled with extremely tremendous pulses of energy that formed a terrifying pressure that made everyone feel like they were suffocating. The situation was just too abnormal. Within the city lord's estate, Yu, Bai Lian, Bai Hai, and the saint rulers all stood outside the building, staring at the sky. They were shocked. They did not understand just what was going on in the weird dark clouds. Fairy Yu sat in her room within the silver-white divine hall, but her eyes suddenly snapped open. She stared out in interest. Although she was within the divine hall, her phase seemed to be able to pierce through all obstructions. This is a heavenly tribulation. Heavenly tribulations usually only occur on the saints' world and rarely happen in lower worlds. Has this world given birth to something impressive? She murmured as her eyes flickered in thought. Bai Hai stared at the revolving whirl of clouds for a while before saying to Yu and Bai Lian, "It's very abnormal there. I'll go investigate first. Take care of yourselves." With that, he flew away. "Be careful, great-grandfather," Bai Lian called out from behind. Her voice was filled with concern. She has been staring at the huge whirl of clouds for a while and was starting to get the sense that something might be wrong. She said to Yu, "Sister Yu, these dark clouds are just far too odd. I'm afraid that something will happen to great-grandfather, so please take me over as well. I still have the flaming Jadeite's brother left on me, enough to deal the strike of a saint king at great perfection. They can be very useful at crucial times." Yu nodded before tailing Bai Hai with Bai Lian in her arms. Bai Lian was still not a heaven saint master, so he could not fly, which was why she needed Yu's assistance. At this moment, a silver streak of light flashed by. The bright moon divine hall flew from the city lord's estate and stopped the two of them. "My dear disciple, you cannot go. Just stay here. Those are no ordinary clouds. It's a heavenly tribulation. Once you get caught up in the tribulational lightning, even saint emperors will be doomed." Fairy Hao Yu's voice rang out from the divine hall. Yu and Bai Lian did not understand what a heavenly tribulation was, but from what Fairy Hao Yu said, the two of them immediately paled in fright. Yu said with worry, "Master, great-grandfather Bai Hai has already flown over. Quickly call him back. He has to come back unscathed." A streak of light, completely condensed from moonlight, flew out of the divine hall. It traveled at an unbelievable speed, catching up with Bai Hai in a single moment and grabbing him by the waist. Bai Hai knew that this light had come from Fairy Hao Yu, so he did not resist. He allowed the streak of light to pull him back. Just when he wanted to ask out of doubt, Fairy Hao Yu's voice rang out again. If someone else had said that, none of them would have believed it. They would have never thought that a swathe of weird clouds would be enough to kill saint kings. But the person who had said this was Fairy Hao Yu, so no matter how exaggerated it sounded, they believed what she said. Bai Hai's complexion immediately changed, and he looked at the clouds with a mixture of fear and surprise. At this moment, the space several dozen kilometers away began to violently ripple and space gates rapidly appeared one after another. Great groups of saint kings emerged with a few saint emperors in between. The group of experts had hurried over from Mercenary City and had arrived in the region at the same time. However, as soon as they emerged from their space gates, they quickly flew toward the tungsten alloy mine and finally stopped 10 kilometers away from the central whirl of clouds. All of them stared at it sternly. None of them were bold enough to act recklessly before they understood the situation. "Weird, what's happened here? Why has such a large expanse of dark clouds suddenly appeared? These clouds are teeming with weirdness, This doesn't seem to be a tunnel to the world of forsaken saints. The energy hidden within these clouds is just far too powerful. Even with my strength as a 7th heavenly layer Saint King, I actually can feel my skin crawl. All the Saint Kings gathered together to discuss the weather. They talked about the weird clouds, and a few braver Saint Kings even advanced toward the whirl of clouds. The bright moon divine hall flew over from afar and radiated clear moonlight. Fairy Hao Yu's cold voice loudly rang from the divine hall. This is a heavenly tribulation. It's something that occurs extremely rarely here. The area below the whirl of clouds is the place affected by the heavenly tribulation. Once you set foot there, you will be locked onto by the heavenly tribulation, and you will die even as a saint emperor. That's all I wanted to say. Do what you want. After warning everyone, she moved the divine hall to another region, stopping 20 kilometers away from the center of the whirl of clouds. A heavenly tribulation? What's that? All the Saint Kings were confused. They had lived for thousands of years and had heard about the various stories of the world. Some of them even possessed a clear understanding of a few matters that had happened in ancient times, but none of them had heard of the heavenly tribulation Fairy Hao Yu mentioned. Even the protector clans were the same. They found the term extremely unfamiliar because their records never mentioned anything to do with heavenly tribulations. Fairy Hao Yu, may I ask what a heavenly tribulation is? Why does it happen? Is it a signal? And how do you know about heavenly tribulations? A great elder of a protector clan asked. He spoke calmly and treated her as someone who stood on equal ground as him. She was just a soul now, after all, so her prestige to them was not as great as a living saint emperor. Yadrium, the 3 Class 9 magical beasts, and the Path Lord of Carnal Desires stared at the bright moon divine hall. It had been created from materials collected from the distant moon, so it was extremely rare and valuable. Not even saint emperors would possess a hall built of moon rocks because the moon was just too far away. They could not create space gates in outer space, so the only way to reach the moon was by flying. Fairy Hao Yu remained silent. Nothing was worth her attention, even the 1,000 or so Saint Kings present and the 5 Saint Emperors. She had come with her divine hall just to see what had invoked the heavenly tribulation. Oh my God, what am I seeing? Is that actually a city completely forged from tungsten alloy? It's tungsten alloy. Oh my God. Its value is measured by the weight of purple coins, and it's such a huge city. Just how much tungsten alloy went into it? A human Saint King that had hurried back to the continent discovered Flame City in the distance and immediately sighed in surprise. His eyes lit up. A few other human Saint Kings who had only just returned to the continent immediately looked over with that. Their eyes widened because of what they saw. This is unbelievable. It really is a city completely forged from tungsten alloy. As long as you possess this city, you will become the wealthiest and most respected person on the continent. Have I seen wrong? This city's not actually protected by a formation, nor does it have a barrier. It doesn't even seem to have a Saint King. It seems to be in the possession of a mercenary group. Another Saint King sighed in surprise while his eyes began to burn with desire. Although wealth was basically nothing to Saint Kings, it was still enough to interest many of them when it reached such an unfathomable level, tempting them to take it for themselves. The surrounding humans who belonged to the continent looked at the 2 Saint Kings like idiots after hearing what they had said. A good-hearted Saint King arrived beside the 2 of them and softly informed them, "My fellow brothers, I'd advise you to not lay your hands on Flame City or even look at it. I can guarantee that you will regret it otherwise, because that city is something that the protector clans fare not to touch." The 2 Saint Kings immediately shrank back with that. They quickly looked away and dismissed the thoughts. The other Saint Kings behaved the same. Something that even the 10 protector clans dared not to touch was not something they could covet. At this moment, the pressure in the surroundings began to abruptly increase. With a deafening boom, a huge bolt of lightning, 1/2 a meter thick, fell from the whirl. It illuminated the surroundings with its light, turning them snow-white in a single moment, and struck the mountain range below at unbelievable speed. Chapter 1306, Shocking Lightning. 4. Crack. A thunderous boom shook the surroundings as the bolt of lightning struck the tungsten alloy mine. A large portion of the tungsten alloy within the mine had been extracted already, only leaving behind the purest tungsten alloy ore deep below. Since the alloy left behind was just far too pure, it was extremely tough, and even a full-powered strike from a heavenly Saint Master would only leave behind a shallow mark. It was extremely difficult to extract, such that probably only Saint Rulers possessed the ability. However, why would Saint Rulers lower themselves to do something like that? As a result, the more pure ore had been left there untouched. But at this moment, an almost bottomless hole had been carved into the ore by the bolt of lightning. The ore that had been struck had vaporized without a single trace. The alloy seemed to have been reduced to nothingness by the lightning. The entire mine violently shook as if a great earthquake was happening. Countless mountains in the surroundings collapsed, and in the blink of an eye, huge cracks littered the boulders. The mountain range had been reduced to rubble in the blink of an eye. The surrounding Saint Kings, who were watching the spectacle, all became rather pale. They stared at the thick layer of clouds in the sky in both shock and dread. All of them slowly backed off subconsciously. They had all sensed the extremely powerful energy within the lightning the moment it fell. It was enough to instill despair in them all. They had never seen such powerful lightning before. Even Saint Kings at great perfection felt as insignificant as ants before it. It was not just the Saint Kings. Even the 5 Saint Emperors gathered there became extremely stern. The lightning was far more powerful than they had imagined. None of them believed they could block the lightning, and even if they managed to, they would be half dead. The power of the heavenly tribulation overwhelmed all of them, and they all retreated. They reached 20 kilometers away before stopping, afraid that they would be affected by the ripples. Only Fairy Hao remained where she was. She had a very deep understanding of heavenly tribulations and understood just how powerful they were as well as how to avoid them. As long as she remained outside the affected region, the heavenly tribulation would not be able to reach her. Bai Hai, Bai Lian, Yu had arrived with the Saint Rulers of the Flame Mercenaries behind them. They all gathered beside the bright moon divine hall. There were just too many Saint Kings present. If something suddenly happened, they would hide in the divine hall immediately. Crack. With another deafening sound, the second bolt of lightning fell a few seconds after the first. It glowed with an extremely bright light as it landed in the exact same place. The second bolt of lightning was clearly much more powerful than the first. It had reached a width of a meter, and wherever it passed by, black cracks would appear in space. It completely obliterated the tungsten alloy below, reducing it into nothingness. All it left behind was a meter-wide hole of an unknown depth. Suddenly, a faint, golden light began to glow at the bottom of the hole. The light was extremely dim, but it grew brighter and brighter at a visible rate. In just a few seconds, the light became extremely dazzling, resplendent like gold. A tremendous ripple of terrifying energy emerged from within the hole, enough to cause the Saint Emperors to reveal a different expression. The Saint Kings leaped in fright. What a terrifying energy ripple. It's no weaker than a Saint Emperor. Just what is this? Has some treasure of the world appeared? Specifically for us to deal with the threat of the world of forsaken saints? What's hidden within this mine? It's actually enough to invoke the wrath of the heavens and be struck by lightning. Is this a blessing or a curse for our continent? Oh no. The ripple of energy deep in the mine is rapidly strengthening. The lightning is so powerful, but it's unable to kill this unknown thing. The Saint Kings discussed the events occurring before them. None of them were able to keep calm. The 5 Saint Emperors were all stern as they stared fixedly at the bottomless hole formed from the lightning. Many people had already raised many ideas of investigating just what was below the mine, but the place was enveloped by a powerful ball of energy. No matter what they tried, they could not pass through it. Even Saint Emperors were no exceptions. At the bottom of the hole was a 30-meter wide space. A golden liquid currently floated there enveloped in a resplendent golden light. The liquid seemed to be completely condensed from energy, and the energy was so powerful that it was stunning. Even Saint Emperors would not be able to keep their calm before it. The golden liquid slowly moved, forming a vaguely human shape. It seemed like an unborn fetus within the womb, where its limbs and head had not become fully distinguishable yet. Chapter 1307. The Gold-Clothed Boy. The third bolt of lightning that fell was even stronger than the others. It was much more violent than the second, having reached 1.5 meters wide. The lightning struck the ball of golden liquid with great speed, causing it to violently quiver. However, it forcefully resisted the lightning that could kill even Saint Emperors. The ball did not dissipate, only shrinking a little. However, a closer look revealed that the energy within the golden liquid was rapidly strengthening even though it had shrunken after being struck. It was undergoing a growth in quality, and the features of a human infant became much more evident and clear. Thunder boomed in the sky, shaking the surroundings. The lightning fell consecutively, with a 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th bolt. Very soon, 8 bolts of lightning had rained down. Every single one of them struck the same place. Each one was more powerful and thicker than the last, and when the 8th bolt fell, the tremendous disturbance was enough to devastate the surroundings, turning them into darkness. The energy of the world in a surrounding 10,000 kilometers was vaporized and the laws there fell into disorder. The saint rulers and saint kings almost fell out of the sky. The 5 saint emperors all paled. They all could feel the threat of death on that 8th bolt of lightning. It was so powerful that it could slay a saint emperor in a single moment. They would be helpless before it. Just what terrifying thing is hidden there? It can take on such terrifying lightning and still survive. The 5 saint emperors all felt extremely curious as well as some unease. No one was able to investigate just what was hidden beneath the mine, but all of them knew just how powerful and terrifying it was. Quite a few of them felt dread. This is transcendence. An origin realm expert has been born on the Tianyuan continent, but it's unfortunate that this world does not have origin energy. It is unsuitable for origin realm experts to cultivate here, and the passage to the saints' world has been sealed by Shui Yunlan. If nothing happens, the origin realm spirit will find it very difficult to leave here and will remain at the origin realm for the rest of his life, Fairy Hayu murmured inside her divine hall. She was also unable to check just what had invoked the heavenly tribulation, but with her knowledge and experience, she had guessed what it was long ago. Rumble. The sound of thunder roared across the sky, producing a string of heavy booms like the roar of a furious dragon. The clouds began to vigorously churn as tremendous energy gathered from all directions, condensing at its center. All the people present were shocked by that. They could already see that the clouds were charging up to deliver the strongest bolt of lightning they had seen yet. At the same time, the pulses of energy from beneath the mine became more and more powerful. The metallic essence within the mine began to rapidly gather from every direction. The tungsten alloy immediately lost its original luster with the loss of the metal essence, becoming extremely ordinary and fragile rock. In just a few seconds, the largest tungsten alloy mine on the Tianyuan continent lost all the tungsten alloy it had. It was reduced to an ordinary mountain range. The lightning in the sky had finished charging up. With a great boom that shook through the whole region, the 9th bolt of lightning fell resplendently. It was 4 to 5 meters thick and the commotion it created was just astonished. Wherever the lightning passed, the space would shatter like mirrors and reveal the eternal darkness behind. At the same time, a tremendous ripple of energy appeared. A dazzling, golden light rose up from below, quickly taking to the sky as if it wanted to rival the darkness of the void. It was a pillar of golden light. Like a dragon, it was vicious and violent as it climbed higher and higher into the air in an unstoppable manner. It collided with the lightning midair. Boom! A terrifying sound immediately erupted when two collided. Wild energy streams wreaked havoc in the surroundings while the mountain range immediately cracked apart. Countless mountains and cliff faces were flattened. The boom finally disappeared, and the cracks in the space began to heal after a long while. The surroundings recovered their initial brightness, while the lightning in the sky completely vanished. The sun shone just as resplendently as before, illuminating the surroundings. The 8th bolt of lightning could easily slay Saint Emperors, but the 9th bolt was countless times greater. However, the golden pillar of light from the depths of the mine could actually rival it, causing both to vanish into the surroundings. The Saint Kings hovered in the distance as they watched the scene unfold. What had happened earlier felt like a dream, completely overthrowing what they understood. They had never seen such terrifying lightning, nor did they ever imagine that such a terrifying but unknown thing would be hiding in the depths of the mine, which had greatly surpassed any abilities that Saint Emperors could possess. The 5 Saint Emperors quietly hovered there with pale faces. They stared at the changed mountain range in a daze. All of them were speechless. It's ended. Let's go, Fairy Hao Yu's face rang in Yu Yu's ears. Soon after speaking, the divine halt silently departed with Bai Lian and Yu Yu, returning to the city lord's estate in Flame City. Bai Hai stared at the unfamiliar mountain range, still rather taken aback with fright. He slowly calmed himself down before leaving with the saint rulers of the flame mercenaries. He no longer bothered with the matters that would follow. He knew very well that even if some treasure had truly appeared there, it would not be something that they could lay their hands on. The mine had been reduced to an ordinary mountain range, and even the terrifying energy below had completely vanished. However, there were still many Saint Kings who dared not to approach it, staring at the huge hole caused by the lightning in fright. A long while later, a bolder Saint King carefully made his way over to see what had happened. He even entered the hole, but he discovered nothing in the end. He did not find any treasure. There was only ordinary stone and nothing else. Afterward, more and more Saint Kings approached the area to investigate. Even the 5 Saint Emperors did the same, but the outcome was the same. They failed to discover anything. Not to mention treasures, they did not even find the residue of any treasures. The lightning was so powerful, so the treasure was probably smashed into oblivion. An older Saint King shook his head and regretfully sighed. Many people agreed with what he said very quickly. They really could not think of any other explanation other than this. They immediately became regretful as well. Fortunately, it's not a new tunnel discovered by the Saints' world. Everyone, since that's all to it, let's hurry back to Mercenary City and continue to keep guard, said the Grand Elder of Mercenary City. Very soon, the Saint Kings from Mercenary City left and the mountain range became empty again. What was different from before was that it could no longer be called a mountain range. All the mountains had collapsed while a few of them had been flattened entirely. Mercenary City was still as bustling as before, but interesting discussions about the lightning could be heard on the streets. The matter became more and more exaggerated and more mystical, producing many versions of the story. A boy in gold clothes stood on a street of the city in a daze. He was less than a meter tall and possessed a pair of large, bright eyes. He passed through the crowd rather timidly, looking around as he walked as if everything was interesting. The boy was white and chubby. He was extremely cute and only seemed to be 3 or 4 years of age. His golden clothes brightly reflected light and were as resplendent as gold. They seemed to have been made from pure gold. The boy's attire drew the attention of many people in the surroundings very quickly, but even more people became fixated on his gold clothes. The gazes were mixed with greed, curiosity, envy, and so on. He crouched down and said with a wide smile, "Child, I've been a merchant for several dozen years and my foresight is extremely great. I can tell with a single glance that the clothes on you are just far too ugly. They don't suit you. Look, I just happen to have these beautiful clothes on me. I'll give them to you. Come, let me take off your clothes and then you can wear this." The fat man quickly moved as he said that, taking the boy's golden clothing off as quickly as he could. He then changed the boy into the white clothes that were also rather valuable. The boy acted like he understood nothing. He did not resist, allowing the man to take off his clothes and change him into the white clothes that seemed even better. This was because he could sense that the fat man would not harm him, nor did he hold any hostile intent. "You filthy merchant. You're tricking a kid for his stuff." Many people in the surroundings began to curse when they saw this. There were also a few people who sighed inside. They felt regretful over the fact that they did not act earlier. The boy's clothes were clearly something extraordinary, but unfortunately, the merchant had taken them away first. After getting the gold clothes, the fat man twisted them forcefully. As expected, they were as soft as embroidered cloth. They could not fade since they obviously had not been dyed. They were made from a material he had never seen before, and with his knowledge, he could immediately tell how extraordinary the material was. He immediately smiled complacently, disappearing into the crowd with the clothes. A few burly men in the crowd looked at each other before leaving the crowd as well, tailing the fat man. The most valuable item on the boy was his clothes, so now that it was gone, the crowd immediately lost interest and dispersed very quickly. The boy continued on without the crowd. He looked around as he moved, curious about everything. He would sink into his thoughts from time to time, but no one paid any more attention to him. The fat man who had taken the clothes had already made it outside the city now. He had discovered that a few people were tailing him, but he paid no heed to them at all. Instead, he hurriedly pulled the golden clothes from his bosom in excitement. He had already determined that the value of the clothes was far greater than anything he could imagine with his many years of experience, because he was unable to determine what they were made out of, even with all his knowledge. He had never seen nor heard about anything like this. However, his face immediately hardened when he stuck his hand into his bosom. The shining clothes were no longer present. He had grabbed a handful of soil. The soil had already been reduced to fine sand, slowly slipping through his fingers. What's happened? The fat man stared blankly for a while before crying out. He immediately became flustered and continued to dig into his bosom. Unfortunately, the clothes were nowhere to be seen. He could not find them no matter where he looked, only grabbing handfuls of soil. How is this possible? How is this possible? How is it soil? Where did the clothes from before go? Where did they go? I clearly put them here, the man said in sorrow. He thought through everything he had done since then, but he could not understand what had happened. Fucking fatty, hand over the clothes if you want to live. Over 10 burly men charged up from behind and surrounded him. They were all malicious, and the leader was an Earth Saint Master. The fat man had just lost the clothes, so he was furious. His face immediately sank when he saw the surrounding people and angrily bellowed, "Piss off. I'm not in a good mood." He arrived before the Earth Saint Master in a single stroke, directly hurling a punch. The fist shone with fire-red light as it erupted with a suffocating wave of heat. The punch moved very quickly. The Earth Saint Master could not dodge it, so he placed the huge sword in his hand vertically across his chest. A heavy sound immediately rang out when the fist collided with the sword. The first cycle Earth Saint Master was blown away along with his sword. A sixth cycle Earth Saint Master. The man who had been blown away cried out as his expression became extremely ugly. The surrounding men all revealed different expressions when they heard that. They were only great Saint Masters, so how could they be an opponent of an Earth Saint Master? They immediately turned and fled. The fat man did not chase after them. He racked his head in annoyance and cursed, "Some great expert must have realized the extraordinary clothes and secretly messed with me. It's my bad luck. I've lost several hundred gold coins because of this." The boy had already crossed a street back in Flame City. However, his white clothes became golden once again. They shone even brighter than gold. He was surrounded by another crowd of people again. His clothes were taken away by someone else again because of his naivety, causing the clothes on him to be replaced once again. The boy looked at the new clothes and found the process to be extremely odd. He could not understand why people liked to change him into beautiful clothes and celebrated when they saw the beautiful clothes on him. Very soon, someone cried out in a building in the city. The man who had taken the boy's clothes away had discovered that they had been reduced to something ordinary after taking them back to his inn. Not only that, they were reduced to dust once he touched it. Bai Lian currently handled the daily matters of the mercenaries in the city lord's estate while Yu Yu sat beside in leisure, eating delicious cake. At this moment, a guard ran in from outside and dropped to one knee. He said, "Vice City Lord, I've just received a report that an extremely weird boy has appeared in our city. The boy wears gold clothes made from unknown material, and it's made many people go green with greed. Quite a few of them have used various methods to take his clothes, but they become extremely ordinary without long and turn to dust with a single touch. Meanwhile, the boy's new clothes will become golden once again. I suspect that this boy is far less simple than he seems, so I've specifically come to report this matter." Chapter 1309. A desirable boy. Bai Lian raised her head and looked at the guard in doubt after hearing his report. She asked, "Are you saying that all the clothes the boy wears will turn golden, like how they were before they were taken off, and the clothes that were taken turn to dust as well?" "Yes, Vice City Lord. That's exactly what's happening, and I've even sent people to verify the outcome. This matter cannot be wrong. The boy only looks to be 3 or 4 years of age, so he hasn't cultivated before, yet he possesses an ability like this. I believe he is definitely something impressive," the guard politely replied. Although he was an Earth Saint Master, a reasonably powerful expert, people like him were just far too plentiful in the Flame Mercenaries. As a result, he dared not to show any arrogance before Bai Lian even though she was weaker than him. Yu Yu looked over as she ate her cake and became interested. She said to Bai Lian, "Sister Bai Lian, I'm assuming that this boy possesses some natural ability. These types of people are extremely rare on the Tian Yuan continent. Why don't we go see just how wondrous he is?" Bai Lian became interested as well. She put down her work at hand and stood up in excitement. She said, "Okay, sure. I haven't gone out in ages, so we can stroll through the city with this." Yu Yu and Bai Lian had hit it off since they were around the same age, so they immediately left the estate on 2 mighty Class 5 magical beasts with a group of guards. A saint ruler secretly tailed them to protect them. The bright moon divine hall stood within the estate silently as it shone with an everlasting glow. Its presence was vast, and it was beautiful, but it was also filled with a holy presence. In an empty corner of Flame City, an ordinary house sat. It was pitch black inside. Visibility was non-existent, and it was filled with the silence of the dead. However, an invisible pressure seemed to permeate the interior, making the house feel suffocating. At this moment, the door to the building opened, but the sunlight outside failed to enter the room. A skinny man entered the house like a ghost before silently closing the door. He dropped to one knee and growled, "Sect Master, Vice Sect Master, the Vice City Lord, Bai Lian, and you have left the estate together. Have they brought the bright moon divine hall with them?" A deep and husky voice materialized in the dark. "The bright moon divine hall remains in the estate. They have not brought it with them," the man politely replied. "I understand. You can leave," the same voice rang out again. It seemed to come from everywhere, making it impossible to discern the place it originated from within the darkness. "Yes, Sect Master, Vice Sect Master. I shall leave." The person turned around and left. He did not make a single sound as he walked, even when opening or closing the door. Fantastic. They've finally left the City Lord's estate without the bright moon divine hall. "Sect Master, we can use this opportunity to take revenge." A heavy voice rang out again within the dark room, but it was clearly different than the person who had spoken before. "We've already remained here for a long time just to kill the people most important to Jian Chen. Yu Yu is his fiancée while Bai Lian is his sister. If we assassinate the two of them, Jian Chen will definitely be left in agony. It's just been a pity that they've been hiding in the City Lord's estate and have never come out. I fear the bright moon divine hall that resides there, which is why we've waited until today." An opportunity has finally presented itself now. I'll wipe out their souls for sure, so they won't be able to be revived by a Class 7 Radiant Saint Master. Humph, Jian, my underworld sect is not something that can be trifled with. You've wiped it out, so just wait for our wild revenge. Killing your fiancé and sister will only be the first step. The people hiding there were Sect Master Gu Zhen and Vice Sect Master Luo Qi of the underworld sect who had managed to flee. At this moment, a large group of people gathered in a large street. They discussed events with one another, causing the entire street to be blocked. A boy in gold clothes stood blankly in the center of the crowd as he looked at the people around him in confusion. His cute face was filled with curiosity. Ever since he had found the city, he had been encircled by large crowds of people numerous times. Many of them hurriedly gifted him beautiful clothes, which made him extremely happy, but he could never understand why the people around him always liked to point at him. I've heard that no matter what clothes they are, once they are worn by this kid, they'll turn golden. Its quality is extremely great, such that it becomes invaluable. Just look at the clothes on him. Anyone with some insight can tell that his clothes are worth even more than gold with just a single glance. I've heard of that as well, but I also heard that once the clothes are taken off him, they will return to how they were before and that they cannot be touched, or they'll be reduced to dust. What a wondrous boy. Surely he doesn't have an ability like the Midas touch. If that's true, doesn't that mean that he can produce endless amounts of wealth? Many people conversed around the boy, but when they heard about the Midas touch, all of their eyes burned with desire. At this moment, a middle-aged woman squeezed her way to a spot right before the boy. She smiled as warmly as she could and softly inquired, "Precious, you can't find your family? All the people around here are bad people. Only I'm good. Come with me, I'll go find your family with you, okay? Kid, come with me. I can guarantee you a hearty life. Brother, come with sister. I like you the most." The people around the boy frantically began to fight over him, but since they were not people with great statuses, they could not use force due to the lack of deterrence from people fighting back. As a result, they could only try various methods to trick the boy away. At this moment, 4 Heaven Saint Masters descended from the sky while flickering with light colored by specific attributes. They landed in the center of the crowd and surrounded the boy from 4 different directions. Afterward, one of them clasped his hands at the surrounding people and said, "Everyone, we are from the Zhou Hermit clan of Zhou. This boy belongs to our Zhou family, so we shall be taking him away. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.